the dream thing. I did change my perspective a little bit on it, but it still sticks the same for me. It's still not coincidence. It is these dreams that you have. It's made mostly from subconscious mind. So it's your subconscious mind makes its subconscious mind goes based off things that are troubling you. You know what I mean, for example, let's say you're dreaming something bad. Let's say someone is trying to murder you in your dream or something, right? It goes so it the dream shows signs. It doesn't show signs to better your life. So it just shows signs of what your life is going through. So I do change my mind on that a little bit. But it's not coincidence. Your dreams are made from subconscious. Your subconscious is you, just your old. It's like it would be you, but like your old self. My consciousness is how I perceive things and how I think myself is.
Right, but like I think you were at the time. Maybe you changed your mind, and that's fine. I
did
think at the
change my
time
mind
you
a little bit because it would not make sense. The spiritual evidence thing wouldn't make sense. But I changed my mind a little bit. I'm trying to think as logical as possible. So yeah.
no worries, man. I just wanted to address that because it's a fair question. But anyway, that's all I got today. I'll see you guys later.
Cool.
Yeah.
My stream went offline there for a little bit. Don't know why. All right.
Yeah. I guess I'm on here to T-Jump. I'm gonna try to start with premises, but I just want to ask you like some few questions.
Okay.
So I know this is gonna be like a semi-weird question, but do you believe that we can achieve immortality soon?
Immortality?
Yeah.
Relatively soon.
Because like this theory is about we achieve immortality by like 2030. Do you think like that's possible?
That seems too soon.
But what would we have to do to achieve this immortality?
Immortality, IMMORT, immortality. We'd have to. So there's different ways to do it. One of the ways is most likely to integrate human consciousness and brains with computers. Another way is to solve biology, to be able to manually manipulate DNA in cells to end aging and whatever. Third way would be to develop artificial general intelligence, and it can solve all the problems for us. Those would be the top three candidates.
Sure. Okay. So which one do you think is like the best one?
The most likely one is AI.
AI. So we like merging with robots, or in a way,
yes,
or like being okay. Sure. Would you not lose part of yourself though? Like, wouldn't like the consciousness? I feel like there's some people that would probably be like more biased towards like the AI thing. Some people think it's cool. Some people think it's not cool. So some people would actually rather the consciousness thing than the AI thing. I mean, either way, it just doesn't matter. But like, yeah, for mortality, but like people are sometimes biased to these stuff. So
yeah,
like,
people are always biased, but biased
some people
well.
don't want to like have. I know, but like some people, like for example, some people just find the fact so weird that you have an electrical thing like people think, okay, this phone is electrical, this phone is this electrical thing. The robot is almost the same as my phone, just doesn't have
your brain,
the other stuff.
Your brain is also electrical, just like the phone.
I know, but like what I mean, they don't like to think of the fact that the electrical device is in the body that is not a part of the body.
Neurons are electrical devices in the body. People are stupid. They like to believe lots of stupid things. They do not care what people think.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. So, like, do you think this, like, how long would you think this way would go? The way with the AI.
I don't know what that means. How what way will go?
Wait, I should have pronounced it better. How long do you think it would take, for this method to work?
50 years.
50 years. Wait, so it's 2023 now, so like 2073
Yep.
or 70.
Yep.
What? That's long though. Like I think AI, the rapid pace AI is going right now, wouldn't it not make sense it would be like half of that?
No.
What? So like AI is not improving rapidly.
Yes, it's improving rapidly, but that's irrelevant because there are lots of steps that need to happen in order to be able to integrate computer systems into consciousness. A lot of steps. So even if AGI is developed, we have a super smart AI, then we have to give it access to tools to be able to test everything. And then it has to actually test things in biology, which takes time. So even though the computer may be really fast, it has to be able to test the ideas in reality with biology, with physical systems.
Yeah.
Take time. And then
If I can ask, like, what are these, like, what are the scientists, like, doing? What would they be doing to the consciousness? Are they going to be, changing it or adding any consciousness to it? Like,
who knows?
so, like, it could also be that to achieve immortality, you can risk, losing parts of yourself.
Obviously, that's always going to be a risk until you actually understand it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to know, from like when you think of immortality. But I like 50 like 70 years, like no, actually I think you said 50 years, yeah. Like 50 years? What? Kind of don't know, it could take that long. Yeah, so like I'm gonna try to, continue like the conversation we had like last week, I guess, but like not in a stupid way, not the 50-50 way or that type of way. So I just wanted to know, like, what is your definition for you know uh quantum fields?
It's a physical substrate that exists to be able to exchange energy.
Okay, so do you believe quantum fields can exist without energy?
Quantum fields exchange the energy. So the field would still be there if there was no energy. It would just be the substrate that the energy could use if it was there.
Okay, so a field can exist without energy, but it needs to extravagate energy.
I don't think that word is the correct word.
Do
you have like
yeah, I think maybe.
argument? What was your argument? Do you have premises and a conclusion for an argument of some kind?
Yeah, so I just really my argument my argument I'm trying to make is, there has to be a wall between the universe and nothing, right? There would have to be.
That makes absolutely zero sense. Because if there was a wall and one side of the wall was nothing, then the nothing would either eat the wall or there wouldn't be nothing because there's a wall.
No, so but like you said, energy. Like you said, the quantum fields can exist without the energy, right?
Yes, just like how space can exist without matter. If it's there and there's nothing to
Yes.
bend it, it'd still be there. It'd still be there.
Yes. Yes. So don't you also not think that quantum fields, existing, and if you're not saying energy, they can exist without energy, that means they can then existing without any motion at all, which I don't understand how that works, but still, I mean, sure. That would you can apply that to, the universe, and outside of the universe, a possible outside universe that has a quantum field that exists. but
Is there
we
a point, some kind of an argument?
yeah. So the point would be, I'm trying to get to the existence of God to a certain extent. I can't really completely prove it, but like I can give you like some decent points for it. So do you believe like something can be outside of space and time?
Yes. Is there an argument? We need premise, conclusion. What is your argument for God?
Yeah, so my argument for God is like, you know, energy. Like energy is like my most fundamental argument. For example, energy, like it's the root of all things. For example, let's say it's a different form of matter. Energy, matter is a different form of energy. Energy, light, motion. Universe. Universe is without anything wouldn't work without energy, so it's everything is in a way dependent on energy.
Okay, premise 1, everything is dependent on energy. Premise 2.
Premise 2, so let's see. Reality, well, the reality and well, God is necessary for reality, to exist in a way.
That's circular reason. If you say God is necessary and then God exists, it's begging the question.
So yeah, if God is necessary, yes, God exists.
Oh my God.
I'm not talking about Christian God, of course.
Oh my God. You can't put the premise God is necessary into your argument.
Why?
Because it's begging the question. The conclusion needs to be God exists. If one of the premises is that God exists or God must exist, then your premise is your conclusion. 1 sec. Peabot Thulu ask how do magnetic fields exist? Magnetic fields exist.
How would a magnetic field exist?
Yeah, he wants to know if you can explain how magnetic fields exist.
Okay, sure.
You're supposed to give an answer.
Right now.
Presumably, yes. To show that you know what the answer is, you would give the answer.
Like I said, a maybe no.
How do you maybe know something?
It's possible to maybe know something, right?
Right. Well, so maybe give the maybe answer with your maybe mouth.
Yes. You said this before. I can just make things up, right?
Sure. Obviously, your brain does it all the time.
But I can make things up based on what I know. Oh no. So that would make sense.
It does not make sense.
What? Give me a reason why that doesn't make sense.
Let's go back to your argument. That doesn't work. Premise 1, energy is fundamental to everything.
Yeah.
Premise 2.
Okay, so I can't use the unnecessary premise. I think I would think that the universe has a time, approximate time. We know something can't come out of nothing, and things have cause and effect, and energy is these causes.
Worst premise I've ever heard. Premises need to be concise, like under a sentence, just like this, therefore that. P, therefore Q.
This stuff that. Okay, so energy is energy is the cause, and because energy is fundamental, is the cause of everything.
That was the first premise.
Yes, but I'm using the first and second. I'm using the first premise to also add on to the second premise, if that works.
That's not how premises work. So if you say something in the first premise and then you say it again in the second premise, it's redundant. You don't need the second premise. You can just say it in the first premise and move on to something else.
I got a different.
So I have to say something distinct from what I said from the first premise.
Yeah. So Google what an argument is. Google what a syllogism is. Wise Ape, but you wanted a different non-stupid topic, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of technical, so it may be a little stupid, but I got arrested a while back, and it's about the criminal justice system
Okay.
In America.
It's garbage.
But, huh?
It's garbage. That is the answer. Garbage. Criminal justice system is garbage.
Well, what they're doing is like when I went to a preliminary hearing, they said to put my hand up and swear an oath to a supernatural thing,
Yep.
and I was just left scratching my head. And then the drug and alcohol, it was nothing drug and alcohol related, but they wanted me to have a mental health evaluation, and I feel like they have some sort of like spiritual agenda with the drug and alcohol and also the mental health. But I've asked for like secular things, and recently I heard about a guy who couldn't get out of couldn't get parole because he wouldn't complete some sort of Christian program.
You can call the
Within
Freedom
the
from
jail.
Religion Foundation, and they will sue the government for you.
Yeah. But like I just feel like I was arrested for something. Maybe it was related to religion because we talked about it with the police and stuff, and they just seem to treat me a little differently.
Well, if you can talk to a
harshly.
lawyer, lawyers will sue for you.
Yeah, I have a lawyer, but it's like a domestic case where me and my wife was arguing, and actually what she called, we went to bed, we got through the argument, and she called this pastor that she was talking to, and he called the police on me, and they showed up in the middle of the night and asked me like what was going on, and
Well, they can't arrest you if you just had a religious disagreement. That was not the reason.
well, no, the reason was like I was disciplining my son, and they said, "Oh yeah, corporal punishment is legal," but I just kind of like grabbed a hold of him. I didn't beat him or anything like that, but then they just said, "Well, we're gonna take you in anyway," and it's just been a.
Why is are you lying, or is it like what you're saying really true?
No, what I'm saying is really true.
Why are you telling us this? Like, why do you not come? Why do you not go to like the judges?
My next step
Like,
now.
teach him. He's on the chair, bro. He's on the chair. How is he gonna come to you and deal with this thing?
He's not. I just talked to him a couple times before, and he's a great thinker, and it's just weird. I've never been arrested before, and they draw everything out like over weeks and months. And my actual hope, and I've told the people in the court, I said, this is going to be replaced with AI. This is, you got. I felt like I was like, how's this judge going to even hear me out? Like when he's talking about some supernatural power, I just felt like he was compromised right from the beginning.
Okay, so this depends what you define. This depends what people define supernatural as. This depends what they define it as. Some people say supernatural is God. It just means God. Some people think supernatural is just above what we understand. But if that supernatural thing occurs multiple times within the natural world, then it would become natural.
Yeah, but I guess the main topic is because I've went through this one time before, like 20 years ago, where a fiance got a PFA against me. She was at a party, and I showed up at the party, and she's like, I said, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "Well, I want you to leave." So I left, and then she got a thing called a PFA, which is a protection from abuse, and I was not allowed to even talk to her for 5 years. I mean, by the time 5 years was over, I moved on. But now I'm married, and my wife kind of did the same thing, and I just feel like the criminal justice system doesn't set up any like mediators or counsel.
So you think it's like unjust, like it's unjust system.
Yeah, they just took me right out of the home, called it abuse. It wasn't abuse, and I just gotta wait and see.
Wait, what was it? Like you were beating your son or something, from what I heard.
Yeah, I wasn't beating him, but I had him loosely by the wrist, and he pulled away and started to like put on an act. And my wife started yelling at me. She's like, "Oh, you're hurting him," and I said, "No, I'm not hurting him. He's just doing this." And I was like, "Stand up," and she's yelling at me.
That is a question for your
And
lawyer. It's not a question for me. I don't know anything about the situation. With
Yeah,
the
no, I agree with you. You know, it's like he's not like he can't come from his chair that he's sitting on and go and help you. You know.
The cops, I know, but the cops just said like, "Oh, you could have smacked his butt. You could have smacked his face. You could scream in his face. All that's legal." And but they're like, "We're just gonna charge you with
question for your lawyer. I have no idea.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, because here I was trying to talk with T-Jump before about you have to kind of like T-Jump, you kind of have to make premises and arguments. You
right.
can't talking like what goes on and stuff like in your life. I mean, that depends if you make an argument about it. Like if you can make from this he was talking about, you can make an argument about the justice system is unrighteous.
Have you looked up what an argument is yet?
Well, yes, but I just want to kind of make a statement that just seems very hypocritical. Where if you've read the Bible, that the husband is supposed to be this authoritarian. My family didn't like it. They're like Christians, they're like, "Oh, we're not going to respect you as authority." But then they call the police, and it's super authoritarian. Like if I didn't stand up, they would slam me to the ground and handcuff me and take me away. And it was just like a real shock how authoritarian the judicial, law enforcement is.
That's why they call them the authorities. Anyway.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Hunter.
Yeah, so T-Jump, I'm gonna. Oh, actually, no, Hunter's the other people here. I guess
Yes.
they can. I guess they can go.
Yeah, I have a question. Is my mic working? Is my mic working?
Mostly. It's very staticky, but yes, it's working.
Okay, I have a premise conclusion for you here. Premise one. Immorality is sin. This is for my God worldview.
Obviously.
Premise
Hence
two.
the sin thing.
Right? God cannot sin, therefore God cannot be immoral.
It's valid, but
What do you think about that?
it would make morality arbitrary and subjective.
Why is that?
Well, because it's contingent.
Well, that's fine.
Well, it's contingent on a subject. So, like, if we want to figure out what morality is, so we say anything God does is moral. Well, it doesn't tell us anything about morality. It tells us nothing. It just says what it's not.
So if God's morality, we could actually mirror your argument to say that immorality is that which goes against the will of God. Would that not be
Make it
a mimic of?
Well, I don't know how that mirrors my argument, but that makes
trying
it
to mimic-
subjective. So it's just if it's contingent on a will or an intuition or a opinion, then it's subjective by definition, and it's not objective morality.
I think maybe he's saying like
So your moral system is essentially involuntary imposition of will is immoral.
Yeah, that's the principle that describes it. Yeah.
Correct. And so instead of using everybody's will, what if you just swapped out God's will instead of everybody else's will.
Well, so in my view, what makes something immoral or moral is whether or not it corresponds to like a law of physics. And the law of physics makes it such that any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. And so the wills there are not what makes something moral. They're just the subject of what morality is. So if God was just a subject of what the morality is, then he wouldn't make anything moral, and that would be fine.
Correct. If he just made a law of the universe.
No. If God is
that
a
was
subject, if
anything
God is
goes against his
no.
will.
If God is a subject of morality, I mean, there's something external to God that is the moral thing, and it determines whether God is moral. That's fine. That would be like mine, because mine is saying there is an external thing to all wills, which is the law of physics, and it determines that the impact of wills is immoral. But you're saying God is the morality. He is the thing doing the determining, which would then make it subjective. So if wills were the thing doing the determining of what makes something morality, that would make it subjective.
Would it? I don't honestly see that difference, because I could see God, for instance, let's say God made gravity, right? Is gravity objective?
If it's contingent on his opinions, then no.
For you, is it objective?
Objective is for all minds. Literally, objective means is independent of any mind, any thought, any opinion. So if it's like, if you're thinking of a unicorn, is that objective for me? Well, I can't change it. I don't have any subjective control over it, but it's still not objective, because objective means independent of any mind. There is no objective for you. It's not a thing. It's either
But it
objective
seems like
or subjective.
it seems like God could change gravity if he wanted to.
Sure.
Right?
So
like if he just
if
decided
it's contingent
he's
on his
all-powerful,
opinions, then it's subjective to him. Subjective.
but it wouldn't be objective to you.
There's no such thing as objective to you. It doesn't, that word does not work. Objective is true for all minds, and if it's subjective to any mind, it's subjective for everyone. So if it's subjective for one person, it's subjective in reality for everyone.
Yeah, I don't see the difference between. It seems like either God's morality can be objective just the same way that yours is objective.
So Hunter,
Or
he's just saying
yours is subjective. I
what?
understand what he's saying.
No, you don't.
Oh.
Shush, cuz. So objective means true, independent of any mind, any opinion, any feelings, any subjective anything. So no minds get to have a say. That's what objective means. Independent of any minds. Mind is based on a law of physics, which was not created by a god. Therefore, it's objective. Yours was created by a god, so yours is subjective.
All right, I can accept that. I also wanted to discuss one other thing that you say quite often, which is talking about how things are done for reasons or for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that everything is determined in some way based on it's either done for a reason or it's done for no reason. If it's done for a reason, then it's determined. If it's done for no reason, then it's random.
Yeah.
When you're making decisions, does that account for that? Like, I see decisions as having two different factors. Obviously, the reason or no reason is one, but there's also a time factor that's involved. For instance, like if you're making a decision, it could take you 6 months to a year to complete making your decision from the time you start making it till the time you end making it. And it would seem like if there's randomness in the universe, which I know you agree that there is, then isn't there a factor missing, this time factor? Because, you know, maybe we do things for reasons, or maybe things happen for no reason, but is it possible we could affect when? And for what reason?
So in my analogy of reasons versus no reasons, it's the point isn't like what you choose, chocolate or vanilla. The point is when you go from a decision no decision to decision. So the whatever can cause you to go from no decision to decision has been made has two options. Either it's going to be something that is determined, like time, physics, or whatever, or reasons, or it's going to be something that's not determined, something that's random, like the randomness field in physics. And there's nothing you can add to that to add a third variable that isn't either determined or random. They're all going to be either determined or random. Time is determined, so that's not. If time was a thing that influenced it, then that would be a determined thing, and you don't have any control over that. That's all done by subconscious things in your brain. So there's no way for you to add in a third variable that isn't going to be determined or random, because the ability to go from no choice to choice made can only be done via things that either determine it or it's random.
I think that's very black and white, though, because, I mean, obviously decisions can take a considerable amount of time. So at what point do you go from no decision to decision? Like, let's say you're thinking of changing jobs or something that you might think on it for 2 years, and a lot of things can happen in that time that you're thinking about it. Some of those things could be random, obviously. So you're saying when you go from no decision to decision, but I feel like the variable is I have the ability to choose when, like, okay, now, like, I may not be able to choose the reasons, but I feel like I have the ability to say, okay, now is the time, based on these reasons that I didn't choose. But if I wait longer, those reasons might change.
So, like, the reason you picked this time over a different time was either determined by other reasons or it was random.
So the reason I chose time T1 instead of T7, you think is
either going to be determined by other reasons or it's going to be random.
Okay, let's assume it's random. So now, is that whole decision random? Did it just randomly happen?
Yes. So if you just randomly,
the time I chose,
if the thing that determined what time you were going to make a decision was random, then whatever other determined processes that was leaning you in one direction or another could increase the probability of you picking one direction or another, but ultimately it was going to be determined by this random time picker.
So what does it mean to be determined by random?
Well, this means it was the ultimate cause was random. So it's obviously not determined. It's determined by this random process. So a random process causes the other thing. That's what it means to be determined by random.
Because that almost seems like a contradiction, because either it's determined or it's random.
No. You're confusing the ontology with the cause. So if something is caused by a random thing, the effect was determined by the randomness. So like if you roll a dice, say it's random, the fact that it rolled 6 was determined by the randomness. So you're confusing the things being determined versus a determination of a thing. If the outcome happened, whatever caused that outcome determined the outcome. Not that the outcome was determined, because it could still be random. It could be a random thing that caused the outcome, but the random thing determined this random outcome to be this.
That seems...
There's no contradiction there. It's two different usages of the word determined.
Well, that's why it's confusing, because we're using the same terms to describe two different things. If my decision was based on, let's say I was going to let's say it's something simple. I'm just trying to decide what I'm going to eat when I get home from work, okay? And so I call up my wife and I'm like, hey, what do you want for dinner? And she's like, oh, I don't know. Should we go out to eat or
This one is not. It's not a
maybe
simple
have some
example.
chicken?
Why don't we just pick A or B? You're in an fMRI machine. Scientist says, I want you to pick A or pick B, and as soon as you pick, press the button.
I can't decide.
Then don't press the
And
button.
then I get hit by a meteor.
So, but we've actually done this
I mean,
experiment.
it seems like our decisions can be.
We've actually done this experiment.
Seems like our decisions can be interrupted.
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant from the
before we make them.
That means the interruption would be a determining factor, and it would be determined. So it's irrelevant. We've actually done these experiments in an fMRI. We know for a fact we can look at your brain and know what decision you're going to make before you make it. You don't have free will.
We look at the decision in a very short time frame. You're like basically
Makes no difference.
asked to make a decision on the spot.
Makes no difference. No, you're not. You can make the decision whenever you want. So it's you get to pick between A and B, and whenever you make the decision after any time period you want to make it, then you press the button. So you're not forced to do anything. You get to make the decision whenever you want.
How do I get to? Well, if it's determined, how do I get to make the decision?
So are you not listening here? So you're in a machine. There's two pictures in front of you, and you get to pick whichever one you want to pick. And whenever you pick, at whatever time frame you think you control, you press the button. We know what you're going to pick 7 to 12 seconds before you pick it. We know you've already picked it before you press the button, before you even know you've picked it. So your perception of the ability to choose is really just your brain determining things for you and giving you the perception that you chose it. Didn't happen.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just. It seems to be lacking still. I know you say the time doesn't matter, but it seems to me like that's the factor that makes most people think that they have a sense of free will. Even if all of the factors going into the decisions are determined, like obviously you're going to have reasons, but can I pick that's the other thing. Can I pick the reasons?
No,
like if there
you don't get to pick anything. Any of the reasons you pick, they were picked for other determined reasons. Any of the times that you picked were picked for other determined reasons. All of the things you're just kicking the can down the road, another thing to reinvent the same question. Is the time that you picked determined for reasons, or was it random? Determined for reasons. Okay. You didn't have a control over that any more than you chose ice cream, chocolate, or vanilla. It makes no difference which of the variables you ask about. The time, the reasons you make the decision, picking the reasons, all of those things are going to fall back on the exact same question. Was that thing that you chose, whether it's a reason, whether it's a time, whether it's the decision itself, was that determined by reasons or was it random? And they're all going to be one of those two things. They're all going to fall back on one of those two things, no matter which version you ask about.
So if there is randomness, then theoretically there could be no decisions. That makes sense.
There's still a decision.
Random,
still a decision. It's just caused by randomness.
What?
Decisions
There's
caused
decisions
by randomness.
It's caused by randomness.
Yes.
Yeah, T-Jam, may I ask something?
Sure.
Yeah, so it's like, what does something which is random appears to be? Because everything that is random, like let's say we have a leaf that is falling down. We don't know exactly, like when we put it down, if it's gonna go left and right. But we have a system in which we can predict its behavior. But we say it moves random because we don't know exactly where it's gonna go. But the thing is, it still has a cause. whether we know what the cause is or not. So it's a question. It's like, just because we don't know or like know what the cause is, it's like, doesn't mean it's not random.
No.
Or is it random?
So in physics, the consensus of physics is that randomness is a fundamental force in physics. So it's not just apparently random. There's no hidden variable. It's literally random. There is an actual randomness. You can check.
Yes, there's even low randomness.
There's a paper of a poll of physicists that it's like
Randomness is a force.
Yeah, it's now a force.
So that means it's something which is predictable, because if it wasn't force, it would not be predictable.
No.
So randomness is predictable.
No, it's not predictable.
No, so randomness is just defined as the quality or state of a lacking pattern.
Lacking. So if it lacks pattern, it's not determined.
It is right. It's random. That's literally the definition of random. Not
So
determined.
okay. If I let's say I play chess, I like to play chess. I like to mix my way of playing style almost every time I play. So that means that my way of playing is like random every time. Yeah, but if my play is random every time, that means that like I'm not determined. My decisions are not determined if they are random by that definition.
No, your
decisions
are determined. So randomness here is like quantum physics. Quantum fluctuations are random. Your brain
Okay.
isn't random.
My brain is not random.
So hello, wait. I just wanna say, so if you produce the same results 100% of the time, which I don't think is possible, but let's say you would produce 100% of the time the same results, that wouldn't be random.
If I produce the same, the thing is, that doesn't like only determines from me. It all really depends on my opponent. So my opponent can also change things up. So like if me and the other person brains were like, determined, that means that then we would have the same result each time we play, the line we play.
No.
The thing is, it doesn't happen.
No, because so you guys, guys might be the same, but doesn't mean that when you play that the same outcome is going to come. So, but if you can produce the same outcome, that wouldn't be randomness, though. It wouldn't be randomness.
It's irrelevant. So again, in physics, randomness is a fundamental essence of reality. It is not determined by anything, and so there is a randomness force which is not determined by some unknown variable. It's not just unknown. We don't know what it is yet. It's literally random. That's the consensus in physics.
Yeah, I just have like confusion in terms, because like it's in my mind, randomness is not just absence of something, or rather absence of like pattern. It just means that we cannot necessarily predict the exact things like we are looking at. So like you're changing.
It has no determinate cause. It's not whether or not we can know it.
So randomness is by definition.
It's not whether or not we can know it. Whether or not we can know it is irrelevant. There are determined things that we can't know. That doesn't matter. What matters is it fundamentally in nature determined, or is it fundamentally in nature non-determined?
How do you know that? How do you make a prediction? How do you make a scientific like prediction that something
It's
does not have
randomness until you figure out its patterns.
No, you would need to look at the papers in physics and ask the physicists how they did that.
Yeah, I definitely like should, and I hope you send me some articles on that, because I want to see, because this is just like fighting the definitions. We're not arguing about concepts. We are just playing with words, and I fundamentally just disagree with words. But still, like, we have not reached any consensus.
No, there is a consensus. It is
that's
indeterminate. It is actual randomness. Indeterminate, not determined.
Well, I'm not imperialist. I'm a like rationalist, so I don't necessarily like take that to heart. But it's like even with free will, it's like we have to like agree. Is it like that you can do something else, or is it like that's something that you can only do what you want? Because it can be both, and you have to agree on that. But like if we fundamentally disagree on definitions, then we cannot reach anything like to a consensus.
There is already a consensus on both of those. But you can check out the poll of fundamental attitudes towards quantum mechanics by Schlosshauser actually addresses this question of randomness.
So I just want to tell your argument real quickly.
Sure.
Like the thing is like if you would take randomness, something that has less patterns, and then figure out those patterns, would it still be randomness?
If I take randomness and I see patterns, would it still be randomness?
You know, the thing is, the randomness actually just depends
I mean,
on the it
randomness.
would depend on the mind. It would depend on the mind. You know, on perception.
Yeah. That is also what I wanted to kind of add. It's like the thing is, brain is like pattern seeking machine. So even if there are no patterns, it doesn't mean brain will not find the patterns there.
So,
You know.
Keaton, the thing is, the problem is with the randomness thing, and I had this problem. I
Hey,
want to
hey
talk
Walker,
to IX
Walker, can you
about
fix
this.
your mic? You're like crinkling paper or something.
Yeah, so like the problem with this randomness thing, and I had a conversation with IX with this before, but me personally, like this randomness thing, like for me it doesn't exist, but I'll try to, you know, for a conversation, I would just try to, you know, apply it. So if it's like it would really depend on perception, because these things that manifest into reality would have to have a specific property, you know, and you know these things that, you know, manifest itself, just it manifests itself as complete, right? You said this yourself. It would manifest itself as complete, right? Something would come the process of something finishing DNA, whatever, like the last week conversation we had. It would become something would come as complete, right? So we can't you know think that it doesn't have things that it doesn't.
That is not a coherent
You
statement.
want to say something?
Sorry?
Sorry?
Let me say something real quick. For randomness, do you
Yeah,
think
but
randomness
the John wanted to say something first.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. Can randomness affect like a causal chain? Like say you have a determined causal chain. Can a randomness variable affect that causal chain?
Sure.
Okay. Does it, if the randomness variable affects a causal chain, is it random or determined?
Still random. Like literally uranium decay. This happens.
Yeah. I think I also have a like this like way of thinking. Like the thing is, brain like is like a computer. The thing is saying like brain is determined because it has patterns of like thinking. It's like that is what the brain is, like fundamentally. Like it's like the first bio, like, you know,
Patterns
organic
do not
computer.
matter. Patterns do not matter. What matters is it determinate or indeterminate? Whether or not there's a pattern, I don't care. What randomness is indeterminate.
You said. Yeah, but you said like randomness is just like the lack of
No,
pattern.
randomness
The
is
thing
not
is,
the lack of pattern. Randomness is if an object is determinate or indeterminate. Patterns is whether or not we see it. Whether we see it doesn't matter.
but again, but the thing is, I said that before. Like I'm just like repeating myself. Is I said like you know, when a leaf falls down,
No.
like
I already addressed this.
It's determined.
Check out the paper, Fundamental Attitudes on Quantum Mechanics by Schlosshauser. They literally ask
just
this.
give me a second.
literally-
Let me grab
They
pen and
literally
paper. Let me just write that
ask
down.
this. Is randomness only apparent, like a leaf, where it seems random, or is it fundamentally and irreducibly random? And the consensus is it's fundamentally and irreducibly random. It's not just appears random. We don't just call it random. It is literally fundamentally random.
Okay, can you give me the name of this study again? Sorry.
Fundamental Attitudes Towards Quantum Mechanics by Schlosshauser.
Well, would you mind explaining how it's a consensus and how the study was done?
You'd have to check the study.
Yeah, but I'm kind of an illiterate man, so
yeah, you said it way too quickly.
Would you rather explain this to us? Because we're a bunch of illiterate idiots.
It's an academic peer-reviewed paper. Okay. You can check it out yourself.
I mean, a study can be peer-reviewed, but does that mean that it's consensus?
Yeah.
The consensus is the majority of people in the field agree with it. That's what the study is. It's a poll.
So the study says that majority of the physicists agree that the true randomness in the way you describe it is factual.
Yes, literally there are 4 questions. One of them is it undetermined? The second one is it irreducible? The third one is it fundamental? Irreducible and fundamental are the 2 majority positions.
Yeah, but is being fundamental, does that mean it's random?
The question is randomness fundamental? They said yes.
Randomness in quantum mechanics.
Okay.
Is that
Fundamental
the
in
name?
what? Yeah.
Reality.
Is it fundamental in
No,
quantum
reality.
physics, or is it
Reality.
in classical physics? What
Reality.
reality is separated into
No,
two.
no, no, it's not.
In
It's
physics,
Yeah.
both.
Also,
there's
quantum
classical
physics is
objects,
not
there's
same as
classical
general
objects, and there's
relativity.
quantum objects, right?
No,
Yeah.
Wait, what? Did you just say no?
no.
So quantum physics and classical physics are the same thing.
No.
What are you saying no to? I'm not understanding.
All of the
I'm
stupid
asking you
things
a
you're
simple
saying.
question,
No
right?
one cares that of this made up
I'm
distinction.
asking you a simple question.
Reality is reality.
What-
There is only one reality. Classical physics is just.
What do
a
you mean there is
derivation-
only one reality?
Look,
You have-
Tijam, like we
Oh
have
my
to
God.
keep this
That's-
very like academic
God.
and professional, right? Like,
Yes. So in
right?
physics, there is
So-
no distinction between classical mechanics and quantum mechanics. They are both reality. So if randomness is fundamental to reality, it's fundamental to everything in reality. Whether or not it affects things more in the quantum realm versus the classical realm makes no difference. It's irrelevant to the question.
Look, I'm sorry, Tijam. It just seems like okay. I respect the fact that you pulled the study, but what you're saying right now, it seems like it's being pulled out of your ass. Right? There's a clear
No.
distinction
You're an
from
idiot.
quantum physics and
No.
classical.
Classical physics is a combination of things built in the quantum world. It makes no difference. This is not a part of the question. Whether or not randomness is fundamental to reality doesn't matter whether it's fundamental and affects the quantum realm versus affects the classical realm. Doesn't make a difference.
Do we have a text chat? I don't see the Theist Helpline we had before, and I'm trying to find a place to post something that might be helpful.
I don't think so. I think somebody mentioned that before, that we don't have one.
Okay, let's just pick a channel and put stuff in
All
there.
right.
Have you posted anything
Nope.
yet?
I never ever look at the chat ever for any reason.
Okay.
The thing, T-Jump, that sort of puzzles me is that within physics, which you probably know this already, a lot of times when one speaks upon things or when it comes to determinacy, contrary to that, what's the argument with it that accompanies it, like, and it's like yet to be determined, which is indeterminacy. You know what I mean? I don't hear too much random.
Sorry, this makes no sense.
Stop. So one of the questions is randomness just something that is yet to be determined that we don't know yet? That's one of the questions on the poll. Nobody picks that option. No one thinks that's the case. It's is it fundamentally irreducibly random? Those are the ones everyone picks.
So, another question: If you have something that is deterministic, or let's just say it's a causal chain, and it gets interrupted by something that's indeterministic, is the result deterministic or indeterministic?
Combination of both.
What?
Combination of both. Like,
wouldn't it be indeterministic? Like if
You say it's not
if something
exclusive.
randomly affects something
It's
else.
not mutually exclusive because indeterminacy is uncertain, but then the outcome is then determined. So then we know it's yet to be determined.
No.
That's the result.
But no. So the problem is,
possibly.
right? The problem is T-Jump made the argument where, the randomness thing doesn't depend on us. It doesn't depend on us. It doesn't depend on us. So it doesn't matter how we perceive it, right? So the deterministics for us, that's BS, right? That's BS. The T-Jump said it doesn't have to depend. If it depends on the mind, then no, right? That's what he said, and I listened. So we can't use this analogy, right, for this argument.
What?
So either it's indeterministic or it's deterministic.
Right, and that's what I was trying to figure out. Is that if you have something that you have a cause and effect chain that is just happening, and then all of a sudden randomly just bam gets interrupted by something completely random, wouldn't the result then be random?
no, it's a combination of both.
What does that mean to be a combination?
It means
of both?
deterministic factors and indeterministic factors went into causing the effect.
Right. But what is the
Doesn't make
effect
sense.
then
Doesn't make sense
labeled?
because it doesn't make sense
A
at all.
combination
So
of both. That's
we
what
know
it's
that.
labeled. You can label it a combination of both, and that's perfectly fine.
So then our decisions are a combination of both.
Sure, most likely we don't think that random effects have that much effect on the brain, but yes, it can be a combination of both.
So something with lack of patterns, but something with so something with a quality of state with lack of patterns, and something with the quality with
No, it has nothing to
consistent
do. It has
pattern
nothing to do with pattern. It's
together.
nothing to do with the quality of pattern. That's irrelevant. Randomness doesn't have a quality of patterns, but that's irrelevant. The point here is that it's indeterministic.
What?
It's irrelevant.
What? Jump. I just want to understand you a little bit. So, like, why do you think there is no there is what do you think randomness is? The definition of randomness.
In physics, it is a fundamental, irreducible property of nature. It causes things to happen indeterministically.
Indeterministically. Well, I try to look for indeterministic. It doesn't show up
Would it
anywhere.
help you guys if we actually talked about the two examples that are most prominent in physics right now of indeterminacy, which are
Not
indeterminate in principle
It's just
and not just like because we don't have epistemology yet? Because the two
Wait,
main
so-
examples are virtual particles and radioactive decay. Do you know how those work?
no. He does not know how those work.
Vaguely.
No.
You talking to me or?
Yeah, I was just asking if you guys have heard of virtual particles or radioactive decay. I'm sure you've heard of radioactive decay at least.
Yeah, radioactive decay.
Okay, so if there's a radioactive isotope, whatever, the particles within that isotope are going to decay into other particles. In other words, like their nucleuses are changing. They're shedding some of their nucleus, which causes them to change to a different substance. Does that make sense? The result is energy gets released, and the energy is what we call radioactivity, the waves that cause, sickness and all that stuff. Okay. So the question is, in what order do you think the radioactive particles would decay? And scientists tried to figure that out. And what they concluded is that based on the model of how radioactive decay actually works, there is nothing that determines it in particular. They can make a general prediction about a group of atoms. Like let's say you have 100 radioactive atoms at the start, and they have a half-life of 1 minute. They can predict that after 1 minute, half of the particles will have shed an electron or a proton or whatever in their decay. But what they cannot predict is which ones. There's no way in principle in physics, under the model that we currently believe is the correct model, to have some idea of which particles are going to decay and which ones are not.
Yeah, so wait, but like it makes sense from a scientific outlook, but like IX. So I looked the indeterminate definition. First definition, not yet resolved, undecided. Second definition, not known or discovered. So it depends on perception. It depends on how we perceive these things. Because when something manifests in reality, it would have to have a property, would have to have a pattern in a way, right? We just perceive it as not having a pattern, right?
Hello. So you didn't actually listen to anything I said. And that is a question.
I answered. He was talking about randomness, and I'm counting that argument.
So that's also a no, then.
What are you talking about, bro?
He wasn't making an argument.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I was trying to respond. So I sent you, it's LX, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I sent you two videos for the two phenomena in question. One is called Are Virtual Particles a New Layer of Reality? And the other is called Why Can Elementary Particles Decay? So both of these explain the decay phenomena and the virtual particle phenomena. Now, the thing that makes us say that these are actually random is that the way that we model them, there is in principle no room for information that would determine the order in which they decay in the model.
Yes,
it's not like there's a big question mark and we're like, once we figured that out, then we'll know when they decay. It's actually part of the model and part of quantum mechanics that there is no way to determine which ones will decay in which order.
But the thing is saying this is where it kind of gets the problem. So saying because we don't know it, and I will try to grant you this thing. I'll try to grant you. Let's say it is a part of the thing, which doesn't make sense because when things manifest, it manifests with a specific pattern. And you can say the pattern is the no pattern. I don't care. I really don't care. You can say
Right.
you
Can I
can
ask for
say if
clarification?
something manifests with
There's some.
not
Can I ask for a
Sorry, go ahead.
clarification?
yeah,
Sorry, he's
yeah,
just
I
trying to
mean,
finish. If something manifests, I cut him off. If something manifests, go ahead.
yeah, so if something manifests even with, let's say, and let's try to use what you said, that is a part of the model that it manifests with no like explicit pattern. It is still the pattern. That is still the pattern of that thing. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't just we just how we describe it. We just describe it as no pattern, but it has a pattern. And even if you say it has and it is a part of the model, that model is the pattern. You see what I'm trying to get at?
No. Kind of.
In this case,
Can I ask for
it's not a matter
clarification?
like. Yeah, go ahead.
Alex.
Yeah.
When you say you were saying manifestation, was that the word?
So truth is something that manifests into reality. And if it were to if without reality we wouldn't have truth, right? So if the reality is like what I
My
said, that
language doesn't work that way.
what do you mean?
How I put those concepts together in my head is reality is what is, and then through the medium of our senses, we have a close analogy to how reality is, and then with
Yes,
studies
we
of
can
science and that
observe
sort of thing,
reality.
we get well, no, kind of, because it's all filtered by our senses. Our sense of touch is a really, really coarse measurement of physical interactions, hence why we can have electron microscopes. Our sense of vision is again really limited by the cones and rods in our eyeballs and various other fuck-ups in our genetics. Hence why we can have microscopes and telescopes and various other X-ray detectors and infrared detectors.
So we know we kind of know this.
Is just a rough analogy to what is. And then that all gets put through that medium of the surface of us into our brain. And our brain is 4 odd pounds of toothpaste. Yeah, grok?
From what I heard is that our senses give us the ability to do a tough estimate of what things are. From what I heard from you.
Yes. The best we have is a rough analogy, and through life experiences and testing, we refine that over time.
So I think
your internal body is even learning how to control itself, and then you learn to walk and talk and all that sort of thing. And as you grow up, you gain more and more experiences. But still, this is where I think the philosophy bit gets in, is so because it's also been raised about, so what I perceive as red and what you perceive as red, if you stick us in the MRI machines, the actual colors in our heads that we both recognize as red will not be the same.
I know this. Yes, it's based. Yes, we can perceive it in different ways through frequency, and through light, and yeah, we can. Yes, it can change. Yes, so I can look at something and I can determine it as a certain amount of frequency to other person that has this type of frequency. Yes, that's of course. And by the way, yes, I do agree with you to a certain extent of the observation thing, but like. Our minds are, they're not perfect. They're flawed, just like our senses are flawed too. Like these things are not perfect, right? Like try to think about how much people with the minds, with the subjective minds alone, try to create something that doesn't exist in reality, like in reality itself, but in their minds, and then make it work.
Yes.
There's not a lot of people that do that.
There's actually incredibly few people who can do that spontaneously. The examples I go to are H.R. Geiger and Escher. They possibly also Bach. The only reason that extra Bach is Gödel's Eternal Golden Flame. But like that's Escher's illustrations are literally a product of the wiring in his brain. He could just do that. It's like most artists' art is a product of them. It's something that expresses from them out into reality.
So it's I would say it's a representation of who they are, because because the thing is right. If you say express, then you're going based off that they know they're expressing what they what they what they're expressing, right? That's going based off the consciousness. We have a subconscious too. So if I say a representation, I can write something of a representation based on my subconscious. And I can also do that on the conscious. But if you say express, if I'm expressing something, I'm not expressing it from my subconscious.
So that was a language foobar potentially on my part. So if you've Escher's Eternal Endless Stare, which is actually a bad illusion for him. There's fundamental maths in most of Escher's illustrations that he did not understand. In fact, one of the late laments in his later life is that he had visions in his head that he did not know. He could not find a medium in how to express them. So there were visions, pictures in his brain, in his neurons, that he could not present out in any way that he could think of at the time in the real world, because most of his illustrations were carved into wood and then made into prints, so all of his illustrations were actually initially done backwards.
Okay, but I don't know,
I'm saying it's so a Geiger, H.R. Geiger, the classic biomechanics. That's just the way his neurons worked, and those are the images that came out of him.
Yeah, but wait, Peebo, I just want to know what your objection was, because I was kind of talking to IX, but I want to know what did you disagree with, what I said, because now we're kind of talking and no one can really come in and
back to the randomness. So IX is saying if you have a block of uranium, a kilogram, then after X amount of time, half of that block is now the next element down. Yeah?
Sure.
Okay. We cannot know. Before it happens, know which of those atoms will turn from being uranium into the next element down. Hence, it is completely random.
Depends on perception, though. From what I heard, it depends on. We don't know. We don't know. If you say we don't know, then
we cannot know.
Yeah, you said we
cannot predict.
Yes, we can't know.
No, an all-knowing, all-powerful being that cannot know.
Yes, God. You're talking about God, right?
It's unknowable.
Yeah. So from what I'm saying is, from what I'm hearing, you're basing on perception again, which
no.
Yeah.
No, it has nothing to do with perception. Okay. I have
Oh wait,
done
no wait. So wait. So you're taking this block of thing, and then you're saying okay,
uranium.
this thing fast or whatever. Like it just some things a
Uranium.
bit. Yeah, just halves or something, or just
No,
get
the
apart.
entire. So you understand? I have a block of gold. I have a kilogram of gold. It is pure gold. Every atom in that block is an atom of gold. Yeah? I have a kilogram of it. Okay? You can have the same amount. You can have the same amount.
Okay, wait.
in
Okay, wait.
uranium.
So I see what you mean, but like, still, you're talking about something that we cannot know, which has lack of patterns, right?
Yep.
But does it mean? Wait, does it mean that it doesn't have a pattern? No.
Yes, that's what that means.
No, it doesn't mean it doesn't have a pattern, because if something
It does.
manifests itself in reality, it would have to have a pattern. It would. It just has to. Like, you don't understand that.
No, that's your assertion. Now.
No, it's not. It's not assertion. No.
Slow down. Can we go back to your word manifest? Because I don't know what you mean by that. Like, you're using that word.
I said this before. I think you're new, but I think you're new, but like,
very new.
Yeah, no, I think you're new. Like you joined in, like later. But I was talking about truth manifests itself into reality, and these things.
The manifest word. What do you mean by that?
Yes, I mean truth manifests itself into reality.
He's asked
No.
Definition of the word manifest. What is the definition of the word?
Manifest, like something that comes, into reality.
A manifest means manifest, and something like
doesn't
you gotta
really
mix.
Help?
Try
much
like
help.
Try clarifying. If what you mean by truth is something that is real, is that enough?
Yeah. So truth, because there's objective truths, and they don't depend on the mind, right? They're independent
go back
on
to
the
the
mind.
manifest bit.
That manifest, yes.
I need for us to continue talking. I need to understand what that word maps to in your head. Like when I say Escher, everyone generally will get like pictures in their heads of like the endless stare or something like that. They won't necessarily get an image of the guy. But now everyone has this roughly same concept behind my use of the word Escher. So can I try and get that from you with manifest?
So you wanna like a big definition then?
How about a real definition?
Well, okay. When I say the word Escher, do you understand what I mean? The guy who did the art and the images, yeah? You get that?
If I pre-know like what it is, sure. I'm assuming that you already know. I'm assuming that you already know what manifest is, right? But if you want me to give a definition, sure.
No. So you didn't actually answer my question about whether I was being clear to you about Escher. And just because you say a word doesn't mean that someone from a different culture, like G'day, we got wallabies here, is going to match up. If I say Golden Gay Time, someone in San Francisco is not going to have the same concept of going down to Bondi Beach.
Yeah, people, but like,
having a cold one.
But like, no. But like, I think you get what I'm trying to say. Like, for example, let's say I would ask a person. No. Let me finish. Let me finish real quick because I listen to you too. So, if I ask a person, do you know that energy can't be created or destroyed, right? And they have I'm expecting that they would know this, right? But they have a different opinion. Okay, it's like you can hold that opinion, but it doesn't go based on what we know, right?
That
We
makes no
know
sense.
what
You asked
manifest
Opinion
about
is
whether or not
not
they
the
had an
same as
opinion about a
definition.
fact.
Why are you obfuscating?
What do you mean?
Okay. I'm trying to understand what it is that you mean when you say the word manifest. I do not understand what you think that word means. I don't understand what you think.
Then I'll give you a definition then. Sure, a show off a quality, appearance, or something that's demonstrated.
Sorry, say that again
A
for
show off a
manifest.
quality, appearance of that demonstration, appearance and demonstration from that thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I take a real quick step at this?
I think maybe you guys are using, I think maybe you are using this definition, clear or obvious to the eye or mind.
Well,
Are you using
I'm
that?
not using the definition. You are. That's why
No.
again, I'm not.
So if you're not
I'm
using a
new.
definition,
I'm
if you're not using the
slow.
definition,
I'm trying really hard to now process your definition, which is it's going to take me a while. But no,
It probably means
raise it,
coming
Red.
into existence.
No, I think I can help you guys out. It's actually, I think what who was speaking earlier about like the probability? Hunter?
no. So I think maybe you mean like.
You. Wait. So let me explain. I think what you're getting at is that there is the pattern itself. Because when people talk about randomness, for some reason, and I think that you do this, you think of white noise, like a uniform distribution. But randomness can be a probability distribution. So you can still have patterns in randomness. But what these other guys are saying is that even though there's this pattern that we observe at the micro level, fundamentally, everything emerges from pure, well, not pure, but like a probability distribution that we observe, which is random. Okay, that was the example with the uranium decaying or whatever. You cannot say which molecules or which atoms are going to decay.
Yes, we can't say.
No.
Keyword
it's impossible. It's impossible. It's within the fabric of the reality. The property is randomness that does not allow anyone, including
we
God,
perceive
to
it
know.
as randomness. We perceive it as randomness. Like I said before, we perceive it as randomness.
The data presents it as random.
It's it's the way the model works. So there's like two different
No,
senses of randomness.
I already said this IX before. I would explain this to you. So even if it would present itself, this model would present itself as random. It is it's that randomness is a part of that pattern. It is the pattern then.
So let me just explain a distinction.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It goes back to a pattern. It always comes back to the pattern. So it's not random.
Respectfully, you don't even know what I'm going to say. So let me just make a distinction that might help.
Okay. Sure.
So philosophers, when they talk about probability and chance and things being random, they mean it often in two different ways. Like almost everything has like a couple different versions. And this one has a subjective and an objective version. Okay. So subjective chance is just when you don't know the state of the system. The true state of the system is unknown to you. So the chance is unavailable epistemologically. In other words, you don't have a justified way of knowing what it's going to do because there's something that you could know, but you just don't know it and you don't know how to know it. That's just subjective chance. You, the subject, don't have access to whatever the chance may be that's going to determine it, right? Now, this is like rolling dice where you don't know how the dice are going to roll. But if you roll dice in a computer, I can predict exactly how the dice will end up by just doing the simulation of the physics that's about to happen in advance, right? So you can determine something like a dice roll in a computer, but we're asking, can we determine such things in the real world, right? So when we have an epistemological chance, we just don't know what it is that we don't know that might determine it.
So the thing is, right? But the reason why I'm saying it's based on perception, from what I've heard so far from you, IX, is if we figured out patterns, I already said this before. If we figured out patterns, then it wouldn't be random anymore. If you would, if you would figure out the dice, how it would roll for the computer, it wouldn't be random anymore. Yes, sure, I agree. I already said this before.
Okay. So like
But
in the case of like a heads or tails coin, if it's like slightly more weighted to one side or the other, for instance, and if you knew all the physics and controlled everything in a very tight way, you might be able to say it's like instead of 0.5 heads, 0.5 tails, it's like 0.5000012 heads and 0.5 minus that or 1 minus that tails. The point is that's just subjective chance. It's an ignorance factor. But there's a second sense in which chance is possible. An objective chance situation is where it's fundamentally unpredictable, even with perfect information about the universe. And that there's nothing in the universe that in principle predicts it or explains why that one happened and not the other one. And if there are no further facts of the matter to be known, that chance is an ontological feature of the world, not an epistemological limit of your subjective knowledge. So the universe just acts according to probabilities rather than certainties sometimes. Now, what our best models say is that it appears that they are objectively chancy. Now, you could deny this. It's not like physicists don't disagree about this. Like Einstein really didn't like this. He said famously, God doesn't play dice with the universe, right? Like this is a controversial idea originally. However, at present, it's the relative consensus of most of our interpretations of quantum mechanics. Now, there are some interpretations of quantum mechanics that would try to deny this, and it's remotely possible that we are wrong. But what we're saying is if we're right, it's not a matter of a lack of a telescope or a lack of a microscope or any other like special thing that we need that we can't predict the decay or the virtual particles. It is fundamental to the wave function itself. And if this is the case, there is no in principle way that could ever be invented. It is just a way that the universe limits the predictability of how it turns out.
how would we know? How would we know? So if you say we know or if you say we at all, then you go on based off our perception, we as perceiving it. So we can't avoid the we part, right? It's really hard to avoid. I understand. It is based on perception, right? It is based on perception.
It's not.
No.
That
Do you
is an
understand what
equivocation.
I think you guys understand. So
do you understand what it means
through
to
that.
be in principle indeterminate?
Like if I tell you the math of quantum mechanics, there is a probabilistic part of it, and it doesn't appear to be missing anything. So there's four principles, right? The state of a system is represented by a wave function. The wave function evolves according to Schrodinger's equation. Observables are represented by Hermitian operators. When a measurement is performed, the result will be one of the eigenvalues of the Hermitian operator associated with the measurement observable, with a probability, keyword probability, of obtaining each result given by the amplitude of the wave function squared. In other words, the theory appears to explain everything that needs to be explained, and it includes just a probability. So if this is the correct theory, then there is no explanation for that unless we have some like unexpected interpretation of quantum mechanics which somehow explains it. But we're not saying that we just like lack the right instruments to measure this. It is in principle not a thing that could be measured.
okay, so I just want to say real quickly that you guys say it's the randomness and how we perceive these things.
No. We is the word you are inserting.
What do you mean?
It is not we.
Okay.
It is everyone, no matter what, at all.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Not we.
We.
No,
There
not we.
is a block of uranium.
Yeah, replace
1
we with
kilogram
in
of
principle.
uranium. After a certain amount of time, half of that uranium is something else. Which of those atoms change is completely random. End of
No,
sentence.
so no, it's no, because these
End of
things.
sentence.
No, it
End of
isn't.
sentence.
So it isn't.
Hang
So
on,
so
so you're saying, hang on. So now you're saying that atomic theory, the thing that powers stars, the thing that they made the movie about with Oppenheimer, that's all wrong.
Not exactly, because that's relativity. We're talking about
No,
quantum
no,
mechanics,
that's
which came later. But
no, but
yeah, the question is like, what turns on this? Like, I actually wasn't here for the start of this discussion of randomness. Is
Yeah.
there some
Absolutely
question?
nothing. They're literally just debating, is
So-
randomness apparent or is it fundamental? That was the whole point.
Sorry.
yeah, that's the whole point. But like we're arguing for like 20 minutes on thing. But like, I mean, we can keep going, I guess. But like, I really don't like wanna. I really want to make at least Ape God and like the other people talk.
Cause is wrong. It is not apparently random. It is absolutely random, and that is the consensus in physics.
Wait, T-Jump. So,
hi guys.
Wait, T-Jump. I just want to, quickly, say this real quickly. So you don't think that the manifestation of this thing is the pattern?
That doesn't make sense.
Man, so the fact that it manifested means it has a pattern.
Manifested just means it like appeared in reality. That's all it means.
Yes,
and I don't care.
What would it mean by
for this
patterns?
appearance to happen, there would be a certain pattern,
Things
right?
can have a pattern.
There would be a certain motion.
Things can have a pattern and still be random.
Yeah, the
Tell me how
idea
that-
that there's
Yeah, no, I completely agree, but like I completely agree, but like the thing is like the thing is, right, randomness is based on a quality or state, a quality of a state that lacks a pattern, right? What is your definition then?
An indeterminate feature of nature.
Indeterminate feature of nature.
It doesn't matter if it's a pattern. Like, you can randomly get 6, 6, 6, 6, 6 all in a row. It's still random.
Let me see your definition real quickly.
You want to see it? Go to the fundamental
just
natures,
change the subject?
fundamental attitudes towards quantum mechanics by Schlosshauser. They have the definition. Go there.
Ask a morality question.
Yes, you can ask another question. Sure.
A morality question.
So, yes. So T-Jump, what would you say? How would you figure out what is a good moral system versus a bad moral system?
One that corresponds to reality versus one that does not correspond to reality.
I want something a little more in depth. So when you're looking at let's say we have two moral systems. Is there a particular moral system that you think is garbage, like
The one that does not correspond to reality.
a harm-based moral system?
I just base it
Do you
on.
think harm-based moral systems?
I think they're wrong. That's what makes them garbage. They do not correspond to reality.
Right. So you say you think they're wrong.
Yes, I think they're wrong.
What are you using to say, are you using your moral intuitions to figure out that they are wrong?
Sort of.
So my question
I'm
is,
curious why a concise answer wasn't enough.
what?
Well, he told you that he uses the standard of comparing it to reality, right?
Yeah, he does use that standard.
But morality isn't like something you can just compare to reality. I mean,
Says you. If he's using that as his standard, who are you?
well,
to say
he already
otherwise?
said there's no evidence. He says it all the time. There's no evidence.
No
that
hard evidence, but yeah, we can
morality
use
is it.
like the patterns of moral intuition
Right.
moral progress and say, oh look, your model doesn't correspond to that. Like
Right.
if you have a model that has a supreme being drowning millions of babies, that seems to go against everything we know about morality. So that's probably wrong.
So if you have a moral system, so basically what you're saying is if you use your moral perceptions and your moral progress and you feel that the moral system that you're looking at deviates from that, then that would be a justification for you to reject that as the correct moral system.
Yeah. So if you say drowning babies is good, that's reason to reject that as wrong. Yeah.
Right. So would you say that if anybody could provide one example of a thing that is immoral, that is not a involuntary imposition of will, would that basically invalidate your system?
Sort of.
So, for instance, I know that you said there's nothing wrong with lying, correct? Yep. So lying is not an involuntary imposition of will.
No. So
I think that right there would,
like, you have rights over your body, your mouth, and so you have a right to use your mouth to say whatever you want. Involuntary impositions of will only apply to yourself and your property. So let's say I wanted you to be my slave or something. The fact that I can't force you to be my slave is not an involuntary imposition of will, because will only applies to yourself and your property. You are not my property. So even if I will you to be my slave, it's not immoral because you are not my property.
right. Okay. So in the best of all possible worlds, though, I can still lie to you, correct?
Sure.
Okay. So all I'm trying to do is establish one thing that I think that everybody would agree is immoral, and I don't know how we would ever not agree, but if somebody can lie to you in the best of all possible worlds, then they would be able to convince you to do things.
So
why not?
In the best of all possible worlds, you get your own universe where you can set all the rules you want. So you know everything. You can be omniscient in your universe and know everything. So they could lie to you. They can tell you something's wrong or whatever, but you would already know that they're lying. You could also make lying impossible in your universe if you didn't want people to lie to you, or you could just make sure that you know everything that's important, or make it impossible that anybody who tells you a lie, you would know is a lie. And so you wouldn't ever be able to lie to someone and cause some negative consequence in the best of all possible worlds unless they consented to having lies be significant in their universe.
But the thing is, if it's all about consent, right? And if I can lie in the best of all possible worlds, then I theoretically could tell you a lie, because you can't, your universe, actually, you could not make any rules in your universe that would infringe upon my right to lie to you.
No. Everybody gets their own universe. So in your universe, you can lie as much as wait. So in your universe, you can lie as much as you want. But if you want to lie to me, you need to come into my universe.
And I'll lie to get into your universe.
You can't lie to get into my universe. You can't lie because my universe has my rules that you can't lie to me. So you can lie in your universe all you want, but if you want to get into my universe, you need to consent to my rules.
I will consent to your rules.
Okay. And in my rules include that you can't lie.
Right, but when I consented, I lied to you.
You can't. To get into my universe, you have to consent.
Well, the problem is with this analogy is that, two people from, let's say there's two people from, two different universes. I am, the ruler of my universe, and this universe, you could say, is, I'm like, how would you say, universe is part of me. Let's just make it as a,
that's relevant. Stop. So.
No, because you would be that. You would be.
Stop. All right.
Your body would hold these.
So, to answer Hunter's question, in this universe, for someone to enter your world, they would need to consent, and then they would be physically bound to obey by all of the rules of your universe. It was impossible for them to not obey the rules if they agree to them in your universe. So you wouldn't be able to lie to get in, unless I.
But if you're making,
go ahead.
If your universe, if you're making rules in your universe that could essentially involuntarily impose on somebody else's will,
perfectly fine,
right? Then you couldn't have that. Well, no, because involuntary impositions of will are immoral. So you couldn't
involuntary impositions only apply if they're non-consensual. So if I say in my universe, everybody in my universe is my personal slave and must obey me, you would obviously, if you wanted to come into my universe, you would be given a list of all the rules and understand all the implications, and you would be able to agree. And if you agreed, you could be a slave in my universe if you wanted to. That's an option. So because it's based on consent, involuntary impositions are impositions that you didn't agree to. A voluntary imposition is one that you agreed to. So if in my universe you become my slave and you voluntarily agree to that imposition, it isn't an involuntary imposition.
I don't feel like that was addressing what I was saying. So if you are creating rules, if you are saying the rules in your universe can impose on somebody else's will, then your universe would
No.
be immoral.
So I
by
literally
definition.
just addressed this. Immorality is involuntary impositions of will. That's the definition of immorality. Involuntary impositions. A voluntary imposition is not immoral, right? You with me so far?
Yes.
So if you voluntarily agree to be in my world that has voluntary impositions like you are my slave, then you haven't been imposed an involuntary imposition. That's a voluntary imposition. You have agreed to it.
I understand that. So I'm trying to figure out, you say that lying is not immoral.
Right. Lying is not
So
immoral.
how can you restrict people? How can you restrict people from lying?
In their
If
universe,
it's
they
not
can lie
immoral,
as much
and
as
the
they
best
want.
of all, you
can lie as much as you want in your own world. I don't care. Go for it.
can you restrict other people from lying and not have your universe be the universe itself, not you, but the universe itself? Just like
I think I see. So everybody gets their own world, and you only get to apply rules in your own world. So you in your world, I can never stop you in your world from lying. You can lie as much as you want in your world, and I'll never be able to stop you. I can stop you in my world. Like if each individual gets their own individual world, I have my own individual world. You have your own individual world. I can say lying is impossible in my world, but it wouldn't affect yours. You can lie as much as you want in your world.
Okay. Well, for just to get past this, because I want to make it to my end point here, and I got to go here shortly. So let's just assume that there is no rule that you cannot lie in a universe.
Okay.
In anybody's universe. Okay. So I lie to you to get into your universe.
Can't happen. So you've already strawmanned it. It can't happen.
Well, you can make your universe so people can lie to you, right?
Yes, but in order to get into a universe, you would have to first know all of the rules and consent to them. So you can't lie and not consent. You literally have to press the consent button to all of the rules. So like you're not like asking permission, they're saying yes. Like you would literally have to consent to yourself, restrain your own will to abide by all of the rules of this universe.
Right, but that's not a lying isn't a rule of that universe.
Right. But you couldn't lie to get in. That's not how it works.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Let's just say I'm there and
okay.
You've already let me in. We can lie to each other. Okay. Now I can lie to you and I can convince you to do things.
Sure.
Right? Okay. So if I'm convincing you to do things, that means to me, those worlds would be essentially, they would select for con men, wouldn't they?
I wouldn't care. So if I set a world up where I allow lying because I want a line to be allowed for whatever reason, then that is my world and I've determined it that way and I want lying to be allowed for whatever reason, in which case it's perfectly fine to lie because I've allowed it in my world.
It doesn't seem like your principle is actually reflected in what you're saying.
What?
Because you're not saying that involuntary. Well, your principle is involuntary impositions of will are immoral.
Right. So if I allowed lying in my universe, it's a voluntary imposition. I've allowed lying. You're allowed to lie in my universe. It's not an involuntary imposition.
I know, but when you're going to this, it doesn't seem like that's the principle that you're applying in this hypothetical.
That is literally the principle I'm applying. So if I allow lying in my universe, then anything that is by extension done through lying is consensual. It's consented. You can consent to it.
No, I'm saying involuntary imposition.
There is no involuntary imposition of lying if I allow lying.
Forget lying just for a second. Just saying, this whole hypothetical of you get your own universe, okay, doesn't map to involuntary imposition of will.
What are you talking about? Yes, it does.
What I'm saying is, it seems like it's some other principle because involuntary imposition of will.
Okay,
it doesn't mean you just get everything you want.
Stop. So the get your own world thing is a description of what the best of all possible worlds would look like. It's not a description of morality.
Literally a best possible world.
Right. And to me, if the best possible world, if you can lie in the best possible world, then there's...
It would depend on why, now wouldn't it?
What?
It would depend on why.
What is your obsession with lying?
allowed
Lying
lie,
is
and that's
totally
different
fine.
than
If
you're
you
not being allowed.
if you couldn't lie, it wouldn't be the best of all possible worlds.
Well, that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around here, because you say it's totally fine to lie,
Yes.
yet you can create universes where people can't lie.
I don't think you're understanding. So the best of all possible worlds, everybody gets to design their own universe however they want it. And so if they want a universe that can lie, that should be an option. If it wasn't an option, it wouldn't be the best of all possible world. If someone wants a universe where no one can
So you're
lie, they
saying-
should have that option. So no one can lie in that universe, and that's fine too. So in this world, everyone can design their own universe however they want it, and lying is an option you can choose to select or not select based on your preferences in this world.
But that doesn't... What you're basically saying is you can create your own universe and just everybody gets whatever they want.
Yes, you
That
can
doesn't
design your own
map
universe.
to
Yes.
Involuntary imposition of will.
What are you talking about?
That
That
doesn't
literally
map to
does.
involuntary imposition of will.
If it's your universe, nothing could impose on your will.
So yes, if you have a will and it isn't going to be imposed upon, to instantiate that, you're going to need your own universe where you can design your own will space, your will space.
Okay. If I don't have a Ferrari and I want a Ferrari, is that an imposition of my will?
Are you in your universe or not?
Yes.
That isn't... So just because I want something and I don't have it, that's imposing on my will. That's stopping me from
Yes, that's literally the definition of imposition of will. Yes. Was there more to that question?
Well, to me, it doesn't seem like that's imposing on my will, because
That's just
instance-
literally the definition of the words. So
well, no, you say imposition of will is you can't force somebody to do something they don't consent to
no,
doing.
it's the non-consent to doing thing that's an imposition. So if nature is imposing on you, like
Is that
gravity,
not correct? Like, when in previous episodes people have asked you, what is involuntary imposition of will, and you've always said you can't force somebody to do something that they don't consent to.
right, and it also applies to physics. So like
Right.
gravity, aging, anything that you're forced to do by anyone, including nature, that you don't consent to do, is an involuntary imposition.
But me wanting a Ferrari isn't forcing me to do anything.
If you want a Ferrari and reality is stopping you from getting a Ferrari, it is imposing on you. It is restricting you in some way that you did not consent to. So imposition, the definition is a thing that is imposed in particular an unfair or unwelcome demand or burden. So if you don't want a Ferrari, or if you want a Ferrari and you can't get a Ferrari in that world, that's an imposition on you. You have been imposed on the restrictions that you can't get a Ferrari.
Okay. So if I want to live in a universe, if I want to live in your universe and you don't want me in your universe, okay,
that would not be, again,
I do not consent.
Wait.
I do not consent to live in any other universe.
I already
except your
answered this. I already
universe.
answered this. Imposition of will only applies to yourself and your property. So if I will something of someone else or someone else's property, that is not an involuntary or imposition, because it only applies to myself and my property, and I'm willing something about their universe, which is not my property.
That's not what I'm saying.
What?
What I'm saying is you missed what I was trying
You
to say.
asked
So-
if you consented to live in somebody else's universe, and they don't consent to you being there. Is that an involuntary imposition of will?
I only
That's fine.
consent to living in a universe that somebody does not consent to having me there.
Yes.
Then the universe that I live in would be immoral, because it's imposing on me, because it's not letting me live in your
You can
universe.
kill yourself if you want. That's perfectly fine.
I wouldn't be killing myself.
No,
It
no,
would
no,
just
no.
be
If
a-
you don't
I
consent
would
to
call it a
live in any
paradox.
universe other than this other one you don't own, you can cease to exist. That's perfectly fine.
But I don't consent to ceasing to exist. I don't consent to being in purgatory.
Okay, I don't care. Like, that's your choice.
I only consent to living in somebody else's universe that they
you
don't
don't
consent
you don't
to
have a
having me
right
there.
to
That
someone
seems
else's
to be a
universe. So there's
paradox.
literally no difference
Because it
in you
couldn't
committing
happen.
suicide there. So again, you have no consensual rights over anyone else's property.
I'm not
Their universe.
saying
You
that I
can't
have
consent.
anything
You
over their
can't
property.
consent to entering someone
But-
else's universes without their consent. Doesn't work that way.
But my universe, the universe that I'm living in, would be immoral.
If you
You
no
also
no
couldn't
no
have
your universe
Because it would be imposing on me.
no
Because I can't live in their universe.
no again that's you can kill yourself. You can leave.
Yes, because
you
it
can
would be
leave your
violating my
universe
will.
anytime you want. You can leave your universe.
But I can't go anywhere.
You can kill yourself. That's
Like,
that's
I don't
your
have a
choice. This
universe.
is your choice. You can change your will if you want. So if you will something that you like, if you want someone else to be your slave and they say no, and you don't like that, and you don't consent to anything else, you can kill yourself. That's your option. You don't have any rights over anyone else's universe or their property or entering their universe. So you don't get a say in that. It's not immoral that if the only thing you want is if you want to do an immoral thing and you can't, that is not immoral. So no, the universe is not immoral for not allowing you to do an immoral thing. So if all you want, if you only consent, I must be able to do an immoral thing, and you are not allowed to do an immoral thing. No, the universe is not immoral because it doesn't allow you to do an immoral thing. No.
I'm not trying to do
Yes,
an
you are.
immoral thing.
You
I'm
say the
just
only
trying
thing you
to-
consent to is
I'm-
living
I'm
in-
just framing it in
Wait, stop,
the
stop,
matter
stop.
of consent.
You only consent to living in someone else's universe without their consent. That's immoral. So the only thing you consent to is an immoral action. Great. The universe.
It's
yes,
not
it is.
immoral
if you
for
consent,
me to want to live in somebody else's universe.
they don't want you to live there. Then the only thing you consent
That
to
just means I can't
would
live
be
there.
an immoral action. So the only thing you consent to would be an immoral action. They don't consent to you being there, and the only thing you want is to be there. It is not immoral for your
Right,
universe
and
to
so-
prevent you from doing that. If you don't consent to living in your own universe, you can kill yourself, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have a right to consent to
then
live in someone
you would-
else's universe. You don't have a right there.
My universe would be immoral for killing me.
No, you can choose to kill yourself. It's optional. It's consensual.
I'm not choosing to kill myself.
Okay, then again, not immoral.
What I'm trying to show you is that there's
no
a particular
contradiction there.
paradox here, but
I've
there's no
answered,
place.
there's no contradiction.
There's no place for me to go.
That's your
is what I'm
choice.
saying.
That's your choice. I don't care.
It changes nothing.
The fact that I have no place to go.
You only have no
Changes
choice to
nothing.
go because you only
where-
consent to an immoral action. Whether or not you want to enter other people's universes is irrelevant.
But then, no, my universe is still immoral to me.
No, it's not.
Like,
You choose it.
Anyway.
You choose to be there. You can leave at any time.
I don't have a universe.
You can kill yourself.
because
You
I
can
haven't-
leave at any time.
I don't consent to dying.
Right. So you consent to living there or you consent to not living there. That's your choice.
I don't consent
No.
to living
you
anywhere
pick.
else.
You pick. You continue to live there. You do not continue to live there. That are your options. You pick. You have to consent
don't
to one.
consent
You
to
don't get an
either.
option. You consent
You
to
already
one.
did. You don't have to choose to consent to stay alive. You already are.
So it is either you consensually agree to live in your universe and you consent to be there, or you kill yourself and you consented to suicide. Either way, you are consenting.
I can not consent to both.
No.
But anyway, I gotta
You're
run.
already doing one, so you
So-
can't not consent to something you're doing.
What do you mean? I can.
You're
he said I
already
can
alive.
change my mind whenever I
No,
want.
he's
You're
not. He's
already
not.
alive.
Just the
You
fact that
didn't
he's
choose
alive.
that I
The
can
fact that he's alive doesn't mean he's consenting to be alive. Those aren't the same thing.
Every second he doesn't end it, is he not consenting to staying alive?
In the best of all possible worlds, yeah. So if he's choosing to continue to live, he consents to that, yeah.
But I don't choose to live in any.
That's your choice.
Universe.
Your choice is you can continue to live as is or not. Your option. So there's no immorality there whatsoever. None whatsoever. The fact that you want to immorally force yourself into someone else's world is irrelevant. It's not an involuntary position that you don't consent to live in someone else's. You get your own universe. What you do with it is up to you. It's not immoral. There's no contradiction.
I don't consent to my own universe.
You can kill yourself. That's your option. Still no contradiction in my model whatsoever.
I don't consent to dying. I don't consent to dying, and I don't consent to my own universe.
Okay. You can ask someone else, and if they don't, that's fine. It's not immoral.
Just seems like a paradox.
There's no paradox there.
Well,
There's
nobody can
nothing
explain
there.
I'll leave you
There's
with that.
nothing there that's paradox. Not even close.
At some point, it's
If
got
it's
to be.
I
both
get whatever I want, it is.
No, again, you only get whatever you want related to your property and yourself. When you say I only will something related to someone else's
Myself.
property, you get no say anymore. You've lost all say.
In which case, I have no place to be.
That's your choice. You've consented to this. You consent to your desire to only consenting to someone else's universes. That's your problem. No immorality has happened. No paradox has happened. If you consensually agree to having this one consensual desire that requires you to desire to live in someone else's universe that they don't want you there, that's your choice. You have put this burden on yourself. You consented to it. It's your problem.
I don't think that makes any sense.
Makes
But
perfect
anyway, I
sense.
gotta run. We'll see.
I think the non-intuitive part for him over there was that when he said, I want or I desire to live in someone else's universe, he didn't understand that that's like something didn't click, that that's not an option, because he viewed that as an imposition on his will.
Existentialism has to matter in some way. The fact that you exist first becomes primary in your analysis.
I don't think that mattered to his question, because his question is more like, suppose you consent to nothing. You don't consent to die, but
Then
you
he
don't
had to have
consent.
existed.
Well, the argument he's trying to get at is, suppose you don't consent to anything. You don't want to die. You don't want to suicide, and you don't want to live in your universe. You consent to literally nothing.
I would say that as long as he's holding to cogito ergo sum, then he is already engaged in a process of reasoning about his reality, including himself.
I don't
which
think that
includes
addresses his
the
argument.
idea of recognizing his condition and either continuing it or not.
I don't think that addresses his argument. So his argument is suppose there is a conscious entity who consents to literally nothing, doesn't consent to exist,
Where were they?
doesn't consent to being in their universe. They just consent to nothing. Well, then they are consenting
where
to
were they
that
when they
mental
made these
state.
concessions?
Doesn't make a difference. It's irrelevant to the argument. So then they're consenting to that mental state. And if they consent to that mental state, that is the thing they are consenting to in that instance.
So their existence is a mental state. That's their universe that they find themselves in.
It's irrelevant to the argument, I think.
Well, not if you're trying to say that the person's already engaged in a line of reasoning, trying to pretend that they're not.
We're not saying they don't exist. That's irrelevant.
That if he already exists, continuing to exist is a choice.
Again, that's not part of the argument. So the argument is, imagine there is a person who doesn't want to die. They want to continue to exist, but they don't want to continue to exist in their universe or anyone else's universe. Is that an involuntary imposition of will? The answer is no. Because their mental state, their choice to only want to live and not in anyone else's universe or something, their contradictory mental state is their choice. They choose to maintain that.
Yeah, I would have argued that was their world that they started in.
The way I took his supposition is not so, but like a scenario is more like, I want to kill people, right? But the other people, they don't want to die. Is reality imposing on me because I'm not allowed to kill these other people? Something like that.
I don't think so, because his argument was that was just the first part. The second part was he doesn't want to. He wants to kill people, but he doesn't want to live in his own universe. He wants to live in somebody else's universe and kill people. Therefore, the only options he has are two options that are immoral and they're not impossible in the universe. And so because he doesn't want to live in his own universe and only wants to kill people, is it an involuntary imposition that he can't do either of the things that he wants? He doesn't want to live in his own universe, and he wants to live in somebody else's universe, kill people, essentially. Is it immoral that he can't do either of the things he wants? And the answer is no, because the mental state that he wants two things that are immoral in this universe is his choice. He could choose to change his mental state anytime he wants to value whatever.
The non-immortal thing.
So I have a thought experiment, and I want to know your thoughts on a T-jump. That's okay.
Okay.
So suppose you're in a tower, and you know this tower is either in London or in Paris, but this tower has no windows, so you don't know in which one you are. And suppose, like for example, God comes down and gives you a full qualitative description of the universe. You're a physicalist, I think, so let's say this description is only physical facts. And then it turns out that in the other tower, or in both towers, in the tower in London and in the tower in Paris, there are two identical copies. So qualitatively or physically identical. Is there still something you don't know?
What?
So it seems like you still don't know in which tower you are. It still seems like you don't know if you're in Paris or in London.
I'm not understanding the question. So there's two towers in Paris or in London, two copies of me in each tower, and God comes down and tells me all of the propositions of everything in the universe or something, right?
No, all qualitative states, or all physical states in your case. So all protons, electrons, whatever.
Yeah. Well, so I don't trust testimony, so God telling me wouldn't count as knowledge anyway. But I wouldn't, even if I had all of the quantitative propositions, I wouldn't have any of the qualitative.
Yeah, qualitative.
Well, no, qualitative is like
no, you have all qualitative.
The experience. So God telling me all of the propositions doesn't give me any experiential data. So if God told me what the sky is blue, that isn't the same as experiencing the sky is blue. So there's qualitative data, the experiential stuff, and quantitative data, like just the propositions themselves. So if God's giving me the quantitative data, just list of all the propositions, I don't have any of the qualitative data and the experiences. He'd have to like give me the experience for me to have that knowledge.
So it's what it seems like, if everything you are is physical or like one substance, then you would know in which tower you are.
What?
You would not have to go outside to check. You would know it.
Well, so like if I had some verifiable quantitative data of the protons and location, then yeah, I could know which tower I'm in without going outside. Sure. So like if I knew my GPS location, I could tell you which tower I'm in, even though I didn't go outside.
Yeah, but how would you know which one of the two is you?
What? Each one would know where they were based on their GPS location.
But no, you're assuming you just know the physical states of. Basically, there's
that would
a clone
include
in
the
that tower.
GPS location. So there's a computer in the tower, gives me access to all propositions, and I could be like, proposition search. What is my GPS location? It would tell me my GPS location. I'd be like, oh look, I'm in Paris.
Yeah, but it could only tell you if you were different in some sense than a clone, right?
What? I don't understand this clone thing. You asked me which tower.
So earlier you said that
your original
in the two towers.
Your original question was, do I know which tower I'm in, or how would I know which tower I'm in? Just look at the GPS location. Now you're changing it to a different question about how do I know who's the clone? Like you never had this. One of us was a clone thing before. Like I don't.
No.
Two identical copies.
Okay.
Yes.
We're both cloned.
But I think even if there are two copies, you're still one person. You can't be in two places at once.
Yes, that's the question. So
Yeah, so
how
if
do you
you
know
have the
which one of the clones
GPS,
you are?
it doesn't matter if the other one is a clone. You have the GPS.
Yep, like when I go to places, I don't assume that I'm, the location. If I go to a shop and if I take the GPS location, I don't assume that it's like not based on assumptions.
You know where each of the clones are, but you don't know just from the physical facts which one of the clones you are. That's the point.
Okay. Arbitrarily demarcate T jump in London is T jump A, T jump in Paris is T jump B. You say, because obviously they're clones, so they're going to do the exact same thing. You say, I am T jump A, and then you ask, is that statement true or false? There you go. You find out instantly.
So
whether or not you're T jump A.
So the question is,
B.
there are two towers with two T jumps, and I'm trying to figure out which one I'm in. One of them is in Paris, one of them is in London, and I'm trying, and I want to know which of the ones I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just look at my GPS location and say, okay, I am the clone in London.
Yeah, but if you don't know which one you are, you don't know which. There are two GPS locations. One is in London, one is Paris.
Yeah.
So, which one of the is the right one?
How do you define the right one? What is the property that defines the right one?
Yeah, that's the question. Because this argument, I don't say I agree with it, but it's an argument for souls. So.
No, wait. The question is like, can you sense yourself in two places at once, or can you sense yourself only at one place?
The question is he's saying one of you is the real one and one of you is a fake robot or something, and you're trying to figure out if you're the real one or the fake robot, essentially.
I mean,
okay.
I wouldn't call it robot because it's physically identical to you, but.
Well, I don't really understand the point of your question here. So, like, I wouldn't care if I was the clone or the real one. It makes no difference. I couldn't care less.
Yeah, but there seems still to be a fact. You either are in Paris or you're in London.
Yes, and that fact is something we can read in GPS. We can tell that in GPS.
Well, no, only if you know already which one of the clones you are.
No, I don't care. I don't care which one of the clones I am. I can just look at the GPS and say, I am this one. I am the one in Paris. I don't care if I'm the real one or the clone. To me, I couldn't care less if I'm real or a clone.
I think for Ines and G's scenario, assume that both T jump A and T jump B are in like ISO cubes, and you can't get any outside information.
Well, no, because
other than asking questions.
His argument included like God would tell you all true propositions.
Yeah.
So I mean, I literally just
actually hold on. In SNG, is it all true propositions, or is it that like he tells you just like the location and what's the word?
Well, it's more like every atom on every location, more like that.
All true propositions about physics.
Is he also answering all propositions?
All true propositions about physics, all physical propositions.
Yeah.
Isn't one of those propositions going to be you're either A or B?
No. Well, no, that's the question. It would be. It makes the argument for souls because only if you're something different in the physical facts, then you can determine which you are and in which location you are. But
I think he's saying. I think his argument is that suppose there are two individuals who are physically identical, but they have different consciousnesses or something, and you're trying to figure out which one is the original or something. And God would know this because God knows which one has a soul or whatever. But if he's just telling you the physical facts, he's not telling you the supernatural soul goo facts, so that you wouldn't be able to know just based off of this physical facts, which that'd be true. If there was a soul goo that actually existed in the universe and you only knew the physical facts, then you wouldn't know anything about the soul goo facts. That's true. It's trivially true, but it isn't an argument for anything. It isn't an argument there is actually a soul goo.
Well, if it turns out that the physical facts are not enough to determine whether you are in London.
That would just
or
mean
in
there
Paris,
is
then
a
either-
soul. So if souls actually existed, and if there was an actual property of soul stuff out there, then yes, you're right. We wouldn't be able to know it based off of purely physical facts. Sure. There isn't one. There's no evidence of such a thing.
Yeah, but wait, you're not saying it's impossible that two physically identical copies exist, right?
Right. It's not impossible.
Yeah,
I
so
think
let's
I-
suppose there are
I think
two
I do
identical
get-
copies.
Yeah.
And
I think I do get your point a little
if you
better.
exist, then you're one of them, and not both of them.
Sure.
If you're talking about two identical copies, one of the following must be true. Either you need to be able to sense yourself in two locations at once, which means your individuality should be sensed in both locations. So you feel yourself as the same person in two locations at once. Otherwise, it must be you sensing yourself in one location at once. If you can sense yourself in one location at once, that would be the only original you. And then with using the GPS, you should be able to confirm which one you are.
No, he's saying
You wouldn't be
there's two identical bodies. Both have conscious experience, but you don't know which one you are.
But you should know, right? Like which one you are.
No,
like,
if you were like
the one that is
if you were, let's suppose there's a bunch of clones, you've been cloned a million times and were given the same memories in every single clone. How would you tell if you were the real one? That's the question. And he's saying,
Well, the thing is, like, they're not actually identical. I mean, like, they're identical only in relation to their own atoms, but they're completely different in relation to their position relative to all other atoms in the universe.
Right, but he's
not
what he
really
cares
identical.
about in the analogy is one of them supposedly is the original, and the original is going to have this soul goo stuff that the others aren't going to have, and God's going to know which one's going to have the soul goo. That's his argument.
Hmm.
Well, if the argument is a little bit broader, if you're not a soul, then it seems unclear what you are. Because you can go outside and check whether you're in London or in Paris.
You can do that with or without a soul.
It's just literally like the swamp man argument.
No, like what I don't understand in this question is like even with the soul stuff, how do you know if you're the right one, the real one, even with the soul stuff?
Well, supposedly the soul goo would just be identical to the real one.
Yeah, well, it would be a further fact, so it would be some different kind. It wouldn't be a physical fact. That's the point.
It's a soul goo fact.
So like God knows that, and He just tells you, and that's how you know.
This sounds very similar to the whole Star Trek transporter.
Well, it's
thought
one of the
experiment.
idealist arguments. He's using the argument that if there's two identical physical brains, but they have different consciousness, then consciousness must be something outside of being physical. That's his argument. He's just using the idealist.
Well, no one knows the answer to that, do we?
Identitarianism is the position that physical states determine consciousness, and so if you have two identical physical states, they'd have the exact same consciousness.
Yeah, but isn't it like we
Right,
don't
but they'd
quite
be
know if
separate
consciousness
instances. It wouldn't be the
is like part of the brain or separate from the brain or whatever. I don't know the whole
It is
argument, but
consciousness is entirely physical.
Yep.
Guys,
not outside the brain.
they wouldn't be the same consciousness because they'd be different instances of the same consciousness.
Right. So in this
There's a
analogy, it's
difference
saying is the conscious experience the same? So like if I see a TV and you see the same TV, same conscious experience. And so the question is if you can have two physical systems that are exactly the same in every way that produce two different conscious experiences, then consciousness must be outside of something physical. And identitarianism says that if you have the exact same physical states in the brain, it'll produce the exact same physical manifestation of consciousness. So you'll see the same thing.
I think the only way to fix that problem would be if both those consciousnesses are somehow connected, in which if there are two copies or instances of yourself, you should be able to sense yourself from both locations at once.
I think that's irrelevant to the argument. So whether or not you are the same person in both is just irrelevant to the argument. It doesn't make a difference.
I personally never understood this sort of scenario where you have the exact same physical thing, because one property of the physical thing is the location. And if we go back to like the argument about the randomness being part of reality, it can't possibly be the fact that they are exactly identical. So I never understood like this concept.
Well, so this one would mean like all of the physical forces or all of the forces that affect the thing are exactly identical in every way. Location, I don't think would make a difference to the forces there, because we're trying to determine if consciousness is physical or not. And so if all of the physical forces that are affecting the brain are identical between both, and all of the shape and size and energy are the same in both, they should produce the same image independent of their location, as long as the forces are acting with the exact same amounts or proportions in both locations. Then the fact that they're in different locations shouldn't make a difference.
I guess we can presume that, like, even the random stuff is going to be identical.
Yeah, because the randomness stuff would also be physical forces, so those would be included in the argument. Those must be identical as well. Have the identical outcomes to their randomness.
Yeah, like my intuition on that is like, yeah, there's no way that there's going to be any difference in the consciousness.
Yep, that's the identitarian position.
Yeah, so I still didn't understand the GPS response. So how would you determine which one is the right GPS location?
Well,
because you need to determine. You need to first determine some set of properties you want to locate, or some physical state you want to locate. But if they're identical, which state do you want to locate?
What?
You would locate your own personal
Wait.
distance from either London or
I think he's asking. So suppose your brother, there's a clone of your brother, and one of the clones is in London, one of the clones is in Paris, and you have a computer with godlike knowledge that can tell you all true physical propositions. Is there anything that you can type into the computer that could identify the real brother versus the fake identical physical brother? I think that's what he's trying to ask.
Oh, well, the prior locations of the individual atoms, like when they came into existence.
Yeah, that would work.
Suppose you don't know that. You know everything else after the.
Well, I mean, suppose you don't know that, then no, there's no fucking answer. But I mean, assuming that you have that magic computer or God, then yeah, you would know.
Wait,
but I think that the scenario doesn't.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, I think this is like one of those scenarios that in principle you cannot know, even if you have access to the like soul good stuff, unless you can identify that the soul is like the clone soul and the other one is not a clone soul. But I have no idea. Like I would be NSNG. How would you answer your question, but with the other added soul stuff? How do you determine which one is the real one with the soul?
Well, if you're a soul, so if you're something different than you clone in the other tower, then you can just determine by your experience by going outside.
No, like take the scenario from T-Jump from earlier. You have two brothers, like one's a clone, one's the real one, and you have all the facts in the universe, including the soul stuff. How do you determine which one is the real one and which one is the clone?
Well, it's hard to determine. So disclosure, I don't believe in souls, but it's an interesting argument.
No, I get.
But presumably,
what I'm getting at is like even with the soul, or even with ideology, even with the other stuff, even with non-physicalism, you can't determine it in principle.
Well, you don't know, because presumably the soul stuff would be a different kind of fact than the
Yeah, but how do you determine which one is which?
It seems like it's just presumed
Even
that
if you know
magical soul stuff would give you this information, even though there's no properties that have
Yeah,
been told us about the magical soul stuff.
Yeah.
I really don't understand. Like I'd consider myself a Christian. I've never understood the obsession or the necessity even of like the ethereal plane in the literal form. Like I don't get why we have to be so sure and like give 100% certainty as religious people to the existence of planes of existence outside of the ones that we can actually experience.
Hope for an afterlife. One of the main drives of what makes people religious is hope for an afterlife, and so they want to say that you can only have an afterlife in a spirit goo world. Therefore, there must be a spirit goo world. Otherwise, we wouldn't have an afterlife, and that's sad. Therefore, it must be false.
Well,
don't
but like
understand.
this identitarian argument, like it's completely unverifiable. So I mean, you can posit like a completely sure position, but I mean, it's just a waste of everyone's
Well,
time.
This
no.
reminds me of the
The point
philosophical
of
zombies, though.
identitarianism is to address the argument: is it possible to have two physically identical brains that have different consciousness? The answer would be no. It has nothing to do with proof here. We're not trying to prove it. The point is to answer the philosophical question.
Yeah,
But would that
it
then
sort of
would
reminds.
be to use or not?
What?
I mean, when you
Isn't this
really get down into what even physical means, like you start getting down into the quantum realm, like that question breaks down.
No.
Isn't this like simply?
Physical is
Isn't this like extra?
100%.
Physical is
Is
stuff
this
made of
the
energy and
phys-
matter. It's physical.
Is this not like the philosophical zombie, but with extra steps?
No, sort of, yeah. Because the philosophical zombie is the idea of you have an exact physical copy that isn't conscious. Yes, so it's very much like the philosophical zombie.
Is that
But
possible?
I mean,
In
the clone could also
identitarianism,
be
no.
conscious,
In
but-
identitarianism, you can't have a
No.
philosophical zombie.
But even if the clone is conscious, it seems like there still would be a fact where you are and where the clone is.
I don't think.
The other
Yeah, and
person
how do
is.
you determine that? As the third person, how do you determine that?
Well,
How do you,
even
LS,
if you couldn't
MG?
determine it, it wouldn't change the fact that it is either the case that you are in London or in Paris.
Yeah, I think
even
that's
if you
just a
couldn't
weak
access that knowledge.
Yeah, I think that wasn't really the main point of his analogy. I think it's just a bad attempt at a more complicated argument. So the location part I don't think is really significant to the point he was trying to make. He's just trying to do the philosophical zombie or the idealism argument that consciousness has to be more than physical, because if you have two physically identical states who have some difference, the difference can't be physical.
You don't believe that there's any randomness in human like consciousness or processing?
Yes, I think randomness is fundamental, but that wouldn't change the argument, because the argument here is that literally all physical forces are exactly identical in these two states, which would include randomness. So any random quantum fluctuations would have to be identical in these two states. And if literally every physical force was acting on these two brains exactly the same, that they're in two different locations, is it possible they would produce two different conscious experiences? That's the question. And if it is, then there has to be some other factor other than physical stuff that determines what's producing this difference in the conscious experience.
But the randomness is baked in. Like, you've just done away with the problem of randomness, whereas randomness would be the answer to the dilemma.
Well, I agree. So I agree, but they would include that in the physical forces. So when they say all physical forces are acted upon exactly identically, they include randomness in there. So the point of their analogy is to include all physical forces, including randomness and its effects on physical forces. So if you don't include that force and you say all forces in physics except randomness were acted on the same, then obviously everybody's going to grant, yes, there could be two brains with different states based on the randomness feature. Sure.
Right. No, but what I'm saying is that even with all the physical forces identical, people's decisions from that point could vary based on some inbuilt randomness into our brains. So like
Oh, well, the point isn't a decision here. So the point here is, like, if you're having an experience of what you see, like a TV or something, is it possible to have an identical physical brain that sees an elephant or a unicorn? So it's not about a decision. It's about literally just can one conscious experience with a physical brain be different than another conscious experience with the exact same physical brain?
Sure. So I guess I am I'm nitpicking it a little bit. I understand the point, but at the same token, when you start digging into I don't understand how that would disprove the existence of a soul.
It's trying to prove the existence of a soul. So this argument is trying to show consciousness is more than physical. This is an idealist argument to show that consciousness is more.
But the consciousness, like the experience through your senses and everything, is that what you think Christians equate to a soul, or
What?
like a?
Well, no. The question, the point of the question is that if you have two physically identical brains where everything is physically the same, but the consciousnesses are different, then there has to be something extra physical that causes the difference between
No,
the
of course,
consciousness.
yes,
So the
I
point
get
of this
that
argument is to show that there's something more than physical for consciousness. That's the point.
But why would the existence of a soul have to affect your conscious experience?
It doesn't. That's not the point of the argument. That's a different, unrelated argument.
No, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying that everything is the same, right? So all physical forces are the same on the brain.
Yep.
And if there is no difference between those two brains, then there's no supernatural or extra physical influence. And so that extra physical therefore doesn't exist. That's the argument, correct?
No. Again, this is an argument for souls. So this is
Balian, take two physical systems that are identical, let them play out. If the two physically identical systems play out in the exact same way, then whatever. But if they play out,
there's nothing outside the physical reality.
not necessarily. But
Parallel
if they
universe,
do,
identical
but if they
history,
do-
identical people.
Kayla, shut the fuck
But
up,
if they
please.
do play out differently, then that's supposedly evidence for a soul. The
Right,
argument
that's
that
what I'm
this whole
saying.
situation is supposed to be, is there evidence, is trying to provide evidence for a soul, not to disprove a soul. This is an argument given by like theists.
Right.
And
So
stuff,
again, if the physical systems are the same and the outcome is the same and the experience is the same, the consciousness is the same, then there's nothing outside the physical system.
that would be
not necessarily, but
if
that's a good
so
conclusion.
the argument here is that it is the case that there is a difference. So they're saying, they start the argument by saying it is possible to imagine two identical physical brains with two different consciousnesses.
I understand that that's
So
the inverse
they're,
side
they're
of the
not, no,
argument.
no. Your inverse is just not part of the argument. It's not something they care about. Whether or not there were two physical brains that had the exact same state wouldn't prove anything. It's just not part of the argument.
Why would that not prove the opposite? If they're not the same, then that proves some external extra physical force. If they are the same, then that proves that then there is no extra physical force.
No, because even if
Correct?
there was an external physical force, the external physical force could be doing nothing, or it
No,
could be
extra physical, like
Yeah,
outside
yes,
of the
I
physical
understood what you
realm.
said. Even if there was an extra physical force, that extra physical force could be doing two things. One that is a positive direction, one that is a negative direction that cancels everything out and produces the same conscious experience. Or it could just be doing nothing, in which case they would still be there, but it just wouldn't be affecting anything. So the fact that they were the identical experiences wouldn't prove anything. You could use it as evidence maybe, but it's just a different side of the argument that's irrelevant.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense.
May I engage with that particular question?
Sure.
No.
Okay,
No.
so
That was a,
yes or
that was
no?
a joke. That was a joke. You can go.
Okay, so I'll just take the parallel universe thing where you have exact same history, so it's not like a clone suddenly is in a different location or whatever. But, like to say that, would there be a difference proving the soul? No, because like the paradigm within Christianity and with even Aristotelianism is that everything that the soul or what the person knows comes from the senses, right? And so they have the exact same experiences, exact same history. They'll have the exact same experience of consciousness. The soul doesn't bring in, the soul doesn't have senses. And so it's not like bringing in something from another plane. The only way you could demonstrate in that scenario that there is a soul by them diverging in their trajectories would be something which is from outside the person, which would be, for example, one was received grace and the other one didn't from God. And so one just ended up being, starting to live attempting to live a more Christian life, which is like marked by virtues of hope, faith, and charity. And the other one just carries on a very naturalistic life.
That would just mean your
But I don't think-
interpretation would disagree with the idealist argument. So based on your interpretation of how the soul works, it would not affect the conscious experience directly, whether or not someone had a soul, which would mean that your definition of a soul would not apply to their arguments for idealism. Because this is not, again, I'm not an idealist, I'm a physicalist, so I think their argument is wrong.
Why am I
How would they
hylomorphous?
go about proving that argument or arguing for that argument? You can't prove it, of course, but
Which part? What?
Yeah, there'll be no
is it just like
divergence
an
of experience or
axiomatic, like you
trajectory,
just assume it's true?
except for
and-
some external.
non-physical
It's
intervention.
a philosophical argument. So it's saying, is it possible? Is it conceivable to do this? Whether or not it actually happens in reality is irrelevant here. The argument is it possible to have two identical physical states with different consciousnesses? If yes, if that is possible, then necessarily it would infer that something other than physical stuff can determine conscious states. That's the point of the argument. Whether or not it actually happens is irrelevant here. It's a philosophical argument, which means it's based on logical possibility, not nominal logical possibility, or like whether we can scientifically demonstrate it. Separate kinds of arguments.
Right, I gotcha. I guess I overestimated what the argument was trying to prove. So
It would require like an external, non-physical influence, right?
Yes. So, like, if there's a difference in the consciousnesses between two identical states or two identical brains, then something extra physical must be affecting them somehow.
Yep. Saying my hypothetical, given I'm a Christian, I'd say one's given grace, the other isn't.
What is grace?
Participation in something of the life of God.
It's a magic potato.
How do you
Or
do
a
that
cat.
if not through physical means?
Spirit goo.
Well, you
Clearly
can't.
spirit
There
goo.
are some physical means which are assigned to produce that effect, like they're instituted by God, like baptism, Eucharist, absolution.
Spirit goo.
Yeah, but if you have this physical thing occurring to both parallel copies, then you'll both have the same effect, right? And so, but grace isn't limited to just through these things. Like they can be entirely where you're just sitting there on your own and you could be given grace by God. Now, how you would coax God into participating in this differentiation, like give grace to one and not the other, to prove something, I don't know.
So you're treating grace like a physical thing instead of a disposition
A spiritual
of God's mind?
thing, a non-physical thing.
Well, would you consider the disposition of his mind to be a non-physical thing?
Probably.
Yeah, but it's
Well, there you go. There's
it's
your answer.
yeah, but you know, with the only sources we have for knowledge or whatever, or for through the physical senses and through the mental processes, right? And so you'd be looking for, you know, the power of the soul to abstract, I guess, is the term that Aristotle would use. You'd have to give something that doesn't come through the senses and abstraction. You know, one might just carry on a normal life. The other one might suddenly start prophesying or doing something weird. I don't know.
Like prophesying.
I don't know.
right. So I mean, if it's just like a logical syllogism, then like, you know, this makes perfect sense. I just have no idea how you'd use it in any practical way, which I guess is my problem with philosophy in general.
Well, I guess the problem with this scenario is that a physical cause can't produce a spiritual effect.
Well, then I guess there's no point in going to church.
That's only if you hold that the spirit is not a physical thing.
Of course, I mean, of course, it interplays. Like, if you go out
By
and murder
definition.
someone, that's going to affect you spiritually, by almost every
Not at all,
definition
by
of
definition.
spirituality.
Well,
Right?
I mean, spirit is, I don't know.
No,
I guess
it
it
was
could be like
it
some.
was the thing given to you by a god. It is still a thing.
Yeah, non-physical. Spirit is a negation of
Well, that
materiality.
doesn't change the theology.
It can't be a
States that it is
negation. If
something given.
a negation can't be a something. So, like, if it's a negation of physical, it can't be a something. It have to be extra physical or beyond the physical. It have to be an extra something.
If you're a materialist, I would agree.
Well, so like a negation is a removal, right? Negation.
You know, in the sense
Yes.
like not a removal, but rather it's saying that there is no materiality.
Okay.
What you're calling it, you're not positing that it's defined by not being material, but it's rather saying something that isn't material.
Well, no. So
Like
negation.
it cannot be
That's an alternative. So if you're saying there's something that is not material, that means there is a non-material something. If you're saying it's a negation
Mhm.
of physical, that means it is the removal of physical stuff, not and no addition of any extra stuff. So a negation is just
Oh,
a
I see.
removal.
Yep. Sorry, I'm not a philosopher. I don't have like the precision in terminology.
No problem.
Yes, you're right.
Well, you said it was a call in to ask an atheist everything or anything.
Yes.
not everything,
Literally, you
hopefully.
must ask me
So,
all questions. Every single question must be
working
asked.
on it.
Ask an atheist everything.
So what how would you contend in the absence of religion with solving the problems that religion seems to attempt to solve? For instance, how one should conduct their life. Like how do you get deeper into that question without
The attempt is
using
irrelevant. It's the facts at hand that matter.
Well, I started a secular religion,
spot.
Church of the Best Possible Worlds. I think religion can be a force for good. You don't need a God for religion.
So, and when you say God, do you mean like, in what sense do you mean you don't need a God? Like a physical God, like an actual, or
You
like
don't need a conscious
like a thing
entity
that you
ruling the
focus?
universe for anything.
Okay. Well,
Do you need belief in a conscious, non-physical entity ruling the universe for a religion?
No.
The belief in it?
No. Jainism is
To
one
be
of
a
the
theist
best.
is to believe in an interactive God.
Jainism is one of the best examples of a religion without a God.
okay, so you would still be okay with having like a modernist perspective with a prime truth as like, the focus of your, it's a directed belief. It's not a, completely subjective, whimsical type of bullshit, right?
I'm not sure what that means.
So, I think it was Jung. He said like everyone has a god. Just whatever is at the top of your, basically whatever is at the top of your moral or ethical hierarchy in terms of like your ultimate purpose and direction, that serves as a god to you.
Well, that would just be your morality. So he just uses words wrong. But yeah, I think that you should have a morality. I'm a moral realist. So I think morality is real. And I think it's a law of physics.
What do you mean by
Yeah,
that?
but are we arguing for a Platonic ideal as a god?
What do you mean that morality is physics?
I'm a moral realist. So if you Google moral realism is the position that there are true moral propositions, and moral naturalism
that come
is
inherent in the world.
Yeah, sort of. So moral naturalism is the position that they're natural facts.
And there's a moral system ingrained into reality itself.
Yes,
right?
sort of.
Okay. And
So what's the
source of
greatest
that
good?
doesn't seem to bother you in any way?
I think when T-Jump talks about morality being something like laws of physics, I think I do understand that in a different way. It's sort of like with the cosmic evolution, we have all the forces of nature that lead to new stuff, and we have evolution, and through evolution we see patterns. We see physical patterns in creatures, and these patterns are actually something that we can define as objective morality. Now, your internal choices could be subjective, but the patterns that you see are still emergent from all the prior physical processes. So I still think it is exactly the way he describes works out.
Okay, so you view morality as like an emergent
No,
interpersonal
fundamental nature of
phenomenon.
reality, law of physics,
Oh,
like
fundamental
gravity.
Oh, excuse me, yeah. Okay. So how would you handle contention around the proper morality then?
Same way I handle contention
Just argue
around
it?
what color blue is. So there are people who are
Right, but
blind; they can't see things, but there's still a correct, like, color. So, like, whether or not people have a disagreement about reality doesn't make a difference. There are flat earthers who think the world is flat. They're wrong.
So would you be like a complete physical determinist?
Physics indeterminism is the consensus. So there's randomness, fundamental randomness.
Only when you're looking forward. When you're looking backwards, it's determined, right? Can't change the past.
Not necessarily. There are arguments that you can potentially change the past.
Ah. Does that sort of scale up to the macro? Like,
Potentially. So like Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about this. Like if you could sufficiently gain enough energy around going around a black hole, you could potentially go to the past. given general and special relativity.
Don't they even say that if you are somehow able to travel faster than the speed of light, you can go into the past?
Yeah, that's the argument.
I thought, I mean, like I've got a vague memory of what are the spinning black holes that there are? There's some point in
They're
the
all
ergos
they're all spinning.
that
They
has
all
two
spin.
ergospheres.
I think you're talking about quasars,
Yeah,
the pulsars or quasars.
No, spinning black hole. They have two ergospheres, and at some point inside the event horizon, you can actually go faster, and you do go back, but you don't come out in the same universe. Like you cannot change this universe's past. It's something weird like that. Like they were showing it on those Penrose diagrams.
I do not remember.
This is such a long time ago, I suppose. I'm skeptical whether you can change the past in this, in terms of your personal history.
Yeah, so as far as, basically, so you view Christianity as like an archaic, pre-scientific attempt to discover that natural morality, or would you have some other perspective on that?
Well, my view is morality is a feature of reality that affects conscious agents and brains and stuff. And so because it affects us, we interpret it and try to explain it just like we do everything in reality, thunder, lightning, whatever. And so just like thunder and lightning, we try to explain it in a way that makes sense to us, which is where we apply God and stuff to try to explain it. But morality was there prior to any God belief.
Sure. Well, except for the fact that, okay.
How would you describe that morality? It's like morality is like where you are in the food chain and having the intelligence to understand what you are.
No.
Or be aware of it at least.
No, that doesn't make any
No,
sense.
it's inherent.
Don't
Rules
actually
inherent
change
to
anything.
reality in the same way the laws of physics are inherent to
Yeah,
reality.
yeah.
TJ, wouldn't you say like morality, at least based on our observations, seems to be sort of like emergent, like other emergent stuff, rather than fundamental?
The evidence in science indicates that. That's the consensus. I disagree. I think it's more likely fundamental.
I mean, that's like as close to a Christian position as you can get without explicitly believing in a higher power.
No, there's absolutely nothing comparable to a sky daddy who zombie Jewed a guy because he accidentally flooded the world and the lady ate a magical fruit because a talking snake told her to. There's absolutely no correlation to that whatsoever.
What you're doing is reducing those stories down to the level of a fourth grader and then combating the literal stupidity. And that's a little bit reductionist.
They are literally stupid, but there is no parallel between
what they could possibly mean?
What?
Have you ever looked into what metaphors they could be trying to explain through literal, this is how stories work.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's called the natural ambiguity of language. You can ambiguate any word or any sentence to mean whatever you want it to mean. Doesn't mean it actually does mean that or that it's meaningful as relevance. Like you can ambiguate Harry Potter to be more meaningful than the Bible. It doesn't make a difference. The fact that you can add arbitrary meaning to words doesn't add actual meaning to
It's
words.
certainly not arbitrary, and certainly you don't understand the meaning behind everything that comes out of your mouth, much in the same way that a person who's trying to elaborate a story and draw lessons from it might tell the literal story enough times before they can actually understand what they're saying. That doesn't mean that there's no meaning behind it. It simply means that the author might not even know how much meaning there is behind what they're saying.
It means they made it up. So there is no inherent meaning there. And natural ambiguity of language means that language is arbitrary by definition, literally. It's a law of language.
Sure, I'm not disputing that whatsoever.
So there isn't any inherent meaning to language. It's literally what natural ambiguity of language means. There is no inherent meaning there.
Yes. Well, no. So so it's used as a tool, and that tool, I guess, I don't know if I'd agree or disagree with that, frankly. How would you argue for the ambiguity of language?
It's a law of linguistics that there is no incorrect or incorrect way or interpretation of any set of words. The meaning of the words is inherent in the usage of the culture.
Okay, so it's a tool that's culturally negotiated.
Determined,
right?
yes.
Right. So that just because it's always changing, though, doesn't mean that it doesn't have a meaning within that culture. right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that means, so in the culture of archaic pre-scientists, a lot of meaning could be encapsulated in quite literal stories. That's why they don't tell these stories so that they can rub themselves, pat themselves on the back and say, "Good job, you memorized Noah." Like that's not why would people spend time doing that if there wasn't a deeper meaning behind those
Right,
stories?
right. They had cultural significance in the fact that they used the meanings to express certain values and things, but that is irrelevant to the
But those
truth.
values could be the part of that natural morality that you're
Sure.
like they're trying to parse out that
Sure,
natural
I would even
morality, and
argue
they're
that that
using the
would be
tools.
true, that people used religions as a way to express the values that are passed on to them through the natural morality. Sure.
I mean, they can deviate from it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that there's a lot of deviation, but it's like a drilling down into into finding those natural rules. And the reason I said that it was a very you have a Christianity except for the literal stories is that like basically a Christian except for the like extreme literalism on every single story.
You have it backwards.
Right? So, like,
Christianity and all religions are ambiguations of reality, not the other way around.
for certain, yeah. I mean, like, of course.
So it's not that I have a basic Christianity. It's that Christianity copied basic moral tenets in order to build something that's very similar to morality. So it's not that
Sure,
I'm
but
similar to
what
morality
better-
or Christianity.
Humanism
But
came first.
you're sitting back. If you're critiquing Christianity as being imperfect, which I would argue, yes, it is. That's still you have to present a better solution, and I've never seen an atheist ever do that, except for the best
Go to my
approximation
website.
of the secular humanist bullet
Go to my
points.
website.
It's ridiculously shallow.
Go to my website. churchofthebestpossibleworlds.org. You can read all about my morality.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just putting a
No, you
position
said
forward
you
that
haven't heard of any better alternatives. Go to my website, churchofthebestpossibleworlds.org. There's a true objective morality section that gives you a more moral alternative. No baby drowning.
churchofthebestpossibleworld.org, you
Yep.
said? Okay.
Speaking of the best possible world, T-Jump. So the only way for two consciousness to exist in the same universe is if they both consent to it, right?
Yes.
So this is a pretty I'm just getting a vibe that this is quite pro-human and like very anti-Malthusian.
I don't know what Malthusian means. It's pro-consciousness.
Not enough resources. We need to, move against the spread of humanity, basically, to
No.
prevent the world from dying.
No.
Like,
No, it
guys,
has nothing to do with what's it? Eco-friendliness. It's completely irrelevant to eco-friendliness.
But I'm just saying it's pro-human. I was actually giving.
Well, it's pro-consciousness, pro any consciousness.
What would your position be on energy, like proliferation of energy? Would you be for like removing it to or are you just completely utilitarian, whatever works best for?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
God, I'm
Pro
rambling.
energy? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's kind of an off-topic point. I'll just
Like
go back in the corner here.
I think that we should advance technologically to the point where we can provide resources to all conscious agents.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, this strikes me as a very like charity-oriented movement, but as far as giving more comprehensive moral instruction, I'm not sure.
Did you go to the true objective morality section, the one that's literally about a true objective morality?
Okay, sorry, I didn't see that.
T-Jump, which energy source do you think would be good for the future? Do you think it's going to be nuclear fusion or something else?
Both. But the best energy source is going to be photosynthesis, artificial photosynthesis.
Okay, wait, how does that work? Never read about it.
Photosynthesis is how plants convert light to energy. If we can artificially reproduce that, the amount of energy that the sun emits to the earth every day is more than all humans use in a year. So if we can artificially produce photosynthesis, energy problems gone.
Is there any work being done on that right now?
Tons of it,
Like,
yes,
progress?
tons.
It's called solar panels in practical terms.
No, he's talking about going from sun to energy, like a chemical energy source, to some sort of combustion. I'm presuming, not photovoltaic.
No,
which are very
artificial photosynthesis.
Yeah. What is the efficiency on photosynthesis compared to, say, photovoltaic?
How it would? What do you mean?
You know how solar cells like have a maximum of like 30% energy conversion?
Yeah.
What is it for photosynthesis?
It's gonna be higher, but the
I mean, you can double it up because some photosynthesis absorbs red and some absorbs green and blue.
I don't know what the energy conversion rate, but I don't think it matters because of just the amount that you get from the sun.
Yep.
Because like even if the energy conversion rate was 1%, that means we would have 300% of the necessary energy every year. So if we had a 1% conversion rate, it would still be greater than what we would need.
Are you going off the sun's total output, or are you going off what hits Earth?
What hits Earth? Only what hits Earth.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think like we need to just blanket deserts around the world with solar panels. I don't understand why we're not pursuing that.
It would not
Maybe
work.
Just transporting energy is a massive problem.
Yeah, so energy transportation is a problem, and the sustainability. The solar panels die over time. Their efficiency rate is not sufficient in order to generate enough energy to be worth doing that yet.
And then you have the problem of storing the energy. Whereas photosynthesis, you end up with like sugars, which can turn into alcohols or into diesel, and those are easy to store and transport.
Mm-hmm. Literally just make stuff for us. It's a factory. It'll skip the storage process and just make the stuff.
When it comes to interpersonal interaction, so I'm getting kind of an Ayn Randian vibe from it a little bit, which I'm not criticizing necessarily.
Well, there's the libertarian aspect of you should only have consensual interactions. That's true.
Well, but except if you violate the consensual interactions of others, right? Or the consensus of.
In the best possible worlds that it
ability of
advocates for,
others.
it's physically impossible.
For you to violate that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, how would that not... Okay. And that would be achieved, what, through programmatic or genetic altering of humans?
No. So it's the best of all possible worlds is a hypothetical world that would be morally perfect. What would a morally perfect world look like? In a morally perfect world, it would be impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. That's what a morally perfect world would look like if it existed.
Right, but you would agree, like, for instance, children need to be forced to do certain things by their parents, right?
No. So again, this would only apply to people who are adults and are not mentally handicapped. For people who are mentally handicapped or children, the moral thing to do is to remove their limitations to give them the intellectual capability to be adults or to cure their mental handicap, essentially. And so there
Sure, I mean,
wouldn't
if we're in a
be
perfect
there wouldn't
world,
be
at that point, that's trivial, right?
right. So like there wouldn't be children or mentally handicapped people in the best of all possible worlds unless they voluntarily chose to limit themselves or something.
Right. So how does that contend with the problem of so any malevolence would just be immediately stifled by the systems in place in the perfect world. So the moment someone tries to step out and hurt their neighbor through some in some scheme, the system would, like, the AI bots would just do whatever something like that, right?
Yeah, everyone would get their own universe and they could write it however they wanted to write it. And so like if you didn't want anyone to stab you, it would just be physically impossible for anyone to stab you.
Okay, so do you believe that it's always best for people to get what they want?
It's moral, yes.
So again, like people can't want immoral things or like wrong things for themselves is the question I'm asking.
I don't know what that means.
Like there's right, so there's no separation between will and morality.
There's probably a separation. I still don't know what that means though. So like, yeah, if you should be able to make your own mistakes and learn from those mistakes at your own rate. So it would be immoral
why would
to
there be
say that
mistakes if
there is some perfect way for you to be, that if you like didn't know what it was, would there be a justification for society to force you to be this, to go through some trial to better yourself? Yes, that would be immoral. It would be immoral for society to force yourself to go through some trial to change your personality to become your better self or whatever. Yeah, that'd be immoral, and we should not allow that ever.
Okay, so like rites of passage, you're saying?
Yeah, unless they're consensual. So unless you consent to them, society should never have any right to force you to do anything you don't consent to doing.
I would actually kind of agree with that because psychologically, it only appears that exposure therapy is effective if it's voluntary.
Yeah.
So, I mean that would make sense, but at the same token, there needs to be I guess, an understanding that a person's impulsive short-term whim is not that needs to be separate from morality. There needs to be higher order things that they can aspire to without being there. You know, that's one of the benefits of Christianity, like the Jesus story, like that he took on the entire world's guilt and sin.
Wait, could you say that again? Say that, something about aspirations of something better or something?
Right. So you have like morality is something perfection and morality is something you should definitely aspire to. It's never something, it needs to be aspirational. And so what I don't see is a judge, like morality needs to be a judge a little bit. And so if it's all just personal whim and personal want, then that judgment aspect that separates morality from whim doesn't exist.
Why would it need to be a
See what I'm
judge? That
saying?
seems to be irrelevant to morality.
Well, because you'd agree that you've said you're a moral naturalist,
Yep.
right? So there's rules inherent to the universe, right? So those rules, as you deviate from them, act as a judge, right?
No,
How so?
there's no judge. Like what? I don't know what you mean by a judge here.
No, I don't mean like an objective judge. Like I don't mean God with a gavel in the sky, right? What I mean is that your distance from those from that moral perfection, right? Those rules that are ingrained into the universe, like laws of physics, right?
Yeah, what about them? There's
You with me so far?
yeah. So there's moral laws of physics and something about distance.
Right. So the further away you are, the more you violate those rules, I guess. You know, that right. So that
I think the
perfect
problem
alignment with those rules is the goal, right? And so when you conflate morality and desire, your desire becomes the goal, if that makes sense.
Well, so there isn't like a you attempting to better yourself to be in accordance with the rules or something. The goal is that we make the world in accordance with the rules. The world should be perfectly moral. Not you should be perfectly moral. The world should be perfectly moral. So it should be
But
impossible.
you're part of the world. How would the world be perfectly moral without you being perfectly moral?
Well, so if it's impossible for anyone to harm anyone else, even if you have the most immoral desires in the world, we don't care because you can't hurt anyone else, even if you wanted to. And so the world can be perfectly moral, even if you have any desires you can imagine. We don't care what your desires are.
But you can't hurt yourself?
You can hurt yourself. It's perfectly moral to hurt yourself if you want.
On the
As long as it has
practicalities,
no
how do you
effect whatsoever
prevent?
on anyone else.
Unless they consent to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the practicalities, how do you actually prevent someone from hurting another in the perfect world?
Yeah, this is completely impractical. There's no way that this is.
I'm just
within-
asking him, not you.
There are lots of ways you could do it. Give everyone a personal force field if you want. That's fine. But if we control the laws of physics, we could literally just design the world like this. It wouldn't even be a difficulty. Like we almost already have the technological capability to do these kinds of things.
Right, and so your morality is just trying to bring about that perfect control and complete autonomy as quickly as possible.
Maximal
Sort
liberty
of.
possible.
It's more about this is the correct morality, and our goal is to try and get as close as possible given our current limitations. Sure.
Okay. Well, and with the ultimate goal of transcending those limitations. So it's a pro-scientific, pro-human, pro-consciousness, like.
Sure, those are all good.
I mean,
Pro-human, pro-science, pro-consciousness. Yes, all of those.
I mean, you're like, this is as close to like as I see the Christian. You know, I'm not trying to Jesus smuggle. I'm just saying, like, this is.
Well,
it
the
seems to
fact
be
that
at
there's
a high
no
level of
Jesus seems to make it completely distinct from Christianity, especially because Christianity is horribly immoral on a lot of its principles. Hell, immoral. Forcing people to live in this world without their consent, immoral. Forcing people to abide by some kind of transcendental rules of you must listen to Jesus and obey Jesus or you go to hell, immoral. The God commanding mass murders, immoral. Drowning babies, immoral. Killing people via bear because they made from a bald guy, immoral. Like, Christianity is horribly immoral. Like, Christianity would be the opposite of this.
So, okay, you gave a lot of examples there. I'm curious, what drowning babies? I'm not familiar with
Genesis,
where that would be drawn from.
what's it? 1:5, the global flood.
A flood.
Okay, right. So, I mean, can you not see that that might just be an anthropomorphization of nature?
That would kind of defeat the point of the story.
So there's a conscious being, right? So you're saying that the consciousness of God or the existence of a physical reality that is God makes that physical, makes it immoral that he would allow that or do that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So again, this is completely eliminated by my interpretation of Christianity, which is I understand is not widely like most people would say you literally have to believe in, maybe even to the level of creationism to, be a Christian, quote unquote. But from I think just a more, scientifically grounded, intelligent perspective, you can view the punishment on the earth as you can view the story of nature coming about and destroying these people as a story of, for instance, not preparing and paying attention when you should be, right? So, and God is like the abstracted force behind the world that kind of, it's very similar to your moral naturalist. Like, it's just an anthropomorphization of those morally natural principles and like a discovery as to what those principles would be. That's how I view Christianity. And of course, you're going to anthropomorphize those or try to find the ultimate unity that's behind those. And you're going to so, I mean, like, I don't understand like how that would be like, yes, if you view it literally as Sky Daddy, right? Then yes, all your criticisms are accurate. But again, if you view it as an attempt to drill down and find the moral naturalism in the world, then I think you see what I'm saying?
It seems like your interpretation of Christianity is more like secular morality, where you're trying to find the principles that would be best governed for
But
people.
all your critiques, all those things that you use to critique Christianity right there require a literal being or God literally allowing or causing these things to happen out of vindictive, vengeful, like Zeus type behavior, right?
Yeah, so if there's an all-powerful being who allowed any of this to happen, that being would be immoral, yes. So if you get rid of the being part, then you're just talking about secular morality at this point. There's no Christianity, no God anymore at all.
But why does the God of the Old and New Testament have to be a literal, like a being as we would conceptualize a being? Like, and
Well, that's just what most people mean by the word.
It isn't the God of the Old Testament or the New Testament.
Wait, that's just
Burning normative
the way we use the word is how most people in society use the word. So by God, what we normally mean is a conscious anthropomorphic being who thinks and intentions and does stuff. And so if you don't mean that, what you mean is something more like secular morality. And you're not talking about the same thing most people are talking about when they talk about God.
I understand that, but at the same token, anthropomorphizing brings some benefits. And the benefits are that you can actually have a relationship with it, right? And you can view yourself in communication with it as if it is a being.
Sure, but I'm just going back. I'm going back to your question about,
qualities
you
is
asked
not
why does a God have to be this anthropomorphic thing that we mean? That's just what we mean by the word. So if you're talking about when you say I'm doing something like Christianity, you're using the term God wrong there in a societal context, because in a societal context, God and Christianity refer specifically to an anthropomorphic being who flooded the world, who sent Jesus to die for our sins, literally. And you're using
I would struggle with making that claim as widely as you are, because I think when you really delve into a lot of Christianity, a lot of the more sophisticated sides of Christianity, there is this understanding that there's different levels of understanding of that being. Right?
Well, right. There's
And
lots
so
and lots of interpretations, but those interpretations are the minority. Very few people hold to those interpretations as opposed to the ones that there's a literal Jesus who literally died for our sins on a literal cross. That's the majority position for billions. And there are literal polls on this. We've done the polls to show that that does exist.
Sure, and I would say that, but I wouldn't demonize it like you are, because your position is that, well, that's completely immoral to believe, or a being that would act in the way that the Old Testament makes him literally, or says he literally acted, is completely immoral.
Yes.
Right? Like,
I think my take on
but
this
you're
would
throwing
be
out the
like,
baby with the bathwater there, dude. Like,
wait, I think my take on this would be
Valiant,
like,
you're making
I'll
a
let
bad
others speak.
critique of his criticism,
Well,
right?
no. So my argument here is that if there was an all-powerful being, all-powerful, all-knowing being, and he created a world and forced people to be in it where they suffer without their consent, then that would, yes, be objectively immoral.
I don't know, like as an analogy, is Stephen King immoral because he writes characters who end up killing each other and dying in his novels?
If they were conscious, yes.
It's fiction.
Is he imposing on someone's will?
What if that accomplishes a greater goal than the mere, like,
Then it's
than
even
the
more
mere
immoral
satiation
because
of consciousness?
sacrificing a being to accomplish a greater goal is by definition slavery and by definition immoral.
According to what?
My definition of morality, objective morality.
I mean, like, when we eat
According to
animals, we understand that it would be optimal for the consciousness that's behind the animals to not suffer. We understand that, but we sacrifice the animals
I think so.
to our greater goal of sustaining human beings.
For what's it? Veganism. Veganism is moral. Killing animals without their consent is immoral. All consciousnesses. My view applies to all things that are conscious, including animals.
Okay, but I mean that's an insane level of
Morality?
Okay, I can understand that in the limit, but to judge people based
Well,
on
no.
their
So
adherence to that
the
morality
judging part is, remember, there's no judging in my model. It's just a fact. Morality is any involuntary imposition of will. So if you kill an animal, it is objectively immoral. Now it could be the best you can do to keep yourself alive or whatever, and so it's one immoral action to limit another immoral action or to prevent another immoral action, but it's still immoral. So in my world, it is literally impossible to harm any conscious agent, including animals.
So I've got a question, a particular question.
This is
Being
high
a
level,
bit
like,
sort of
perfectionist shit.
casuistic in this, but seeing as you know that humans as conscious agents, right?
Yes.
Do die. Like, we're not immortal. Isn't your morality immoral to bring about the existence of another human knowing that they'll eventually die? Antinatalism?
No, so antinatalism is incorrect. Even if you brought about a person, and that person was then going to suffer some kind of immoral consequence in the world, unless you caused the immoral consequence, then you're not to blame for it. So if you,
But you did,
if you
by having
But you can foresee that they're
doesn't
going to
matter.
get
What you
old and
foresee
die.
doesn't matter. You didn't cause the immorality. So
Wait, so no, that's ridiculous. If I can foresee if I can see a truck coming at someone and I don't stop them from being, and I can stop it and I don't, that's just me being blind. That's completely immoral.
no, it's not. So again, if you don't
Yes, it
cause
is.
the immoral action, you aren't to blame for it. So even if you
Even if
could
you
have
can
prevented
foresee
it,
it?
yeah, it doesn't matter if you foresee it. It's completely irrelevant. So like if I foresee Hitler existing and I create a person who is a Jew, did I do something immoral? Like, no, Hitler did. Hitler did the immoral action. I didn't do the immoral action. Hitler did.
But wait. God. Okay, if you take the observer position on God, then it would. But if you take a
Oh, right. So like if
that would
God
just
had
fit
no
physics
control over the laws of physics,
Right.
and just created humans, then yeah, you're right. God wouldn't be at fault. But since God literally designed the laws of physics, he's to blame for all of the suffering the laws of physics cause. Now, if God had no control over the laws of physics and he just created humans, and then he would not be to blame for the laws of physics.
Sure, I gotcha. Hey, Cat, gotta mark it up.
Oh, Frank is here. Hey, Frank.
Not that it matters, but More money.
Also, Ballin, you're really quiet. You might want to turn up your mic volume.
Oh, sure. Yep. Okay. 1 second.
Hey,
But
Walker,
do
how
you
you
actually
doing?
see your moral system as anything beneficial? Like, what's the point of it?
Truth. The goal is to be true. Like, if there is an objective morality, it wants to be the true one.
But you do see the impracticality of that morality, right?
It's objective.
But you don't even assert that it is
Wait.
objective.
So, something being practical is completely independent of it being true. Objective morality is
Mm.
meant to be true. Whether or not it's practical is irrelevant. We want to know what truth is, not what practicality is.
Right, but you'd leave room for religious systems that try to solve the practicality element as well, right?
Sure, I guess. Like
Because
religious.
that's a void, and that's my entire
No,
position
it's
from the
you
beginning.
can.
Atheists don't.
So there's a
No.
difference between practicality and objective truth. Once you know objective truth, you can then work backwards and say, once we know what objective truth is, we can then try to apply this in pragmatic ways. But they're two separate questions. What is the objective truth, and how do we pragmatically apply it? Is there a way to pragmatically apply my model in reality? Yes, that's the rest of the website that I gave you. It's the trying to decrease the amount of impositions of will by lowering the cost of living, by providing affordable housing. We can work towards that goal. And so knowing the objective truth can give you pragmatic ways to live your life. And there's an entire section on justified immoral actions, like putting people in prison. That's an imposition on their will, but it's done to prevent a greater imposition on the victim's will. And so there are lots of pragmatic ways to apply this morality in reality just fine. It's just a different question to what's objectively real.
But your moral system is faith-based. You just have to believe that it exists, right?
Yeah, they all are.
Okay, so why are you
Right.
adopting one faith-based system which just contradicts a major faith-based system?
Well, the faith-based systems.
How is holding to a Platonic
So
ideal a faith-based
there
system?
are a number of lines of evidence for morality, moral intuition, moral progress, philosophical dilemmas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of these, there are some that answer the questions better than others. So, like Christianity, drowning babies is a thing. That seems to go against most of our moral intuition.
But you'd agree that there are parts of your morality that are going to be in line with the times that aren't going.
No.
Like you said, there's acceptable
No.
immoralities.
No. So in mine, it's the opposite. In mine, there are moral things that go against the times that I say will be seen as moral in the future that aren't seen as moral now. So mine's the
That are
opposite.
completely impractical and will get you killed. and won't allow
Again,
you to procreate,
practicality is
so-
irrelevant to objective truth. So anybody who brings up practicality is just an idiot because they don't understand the difference.
No, not at
between
all.
truth.
That's not true at all. Because all the problems in the Christian perspective or in Christianity that you're citing were practical for the time.
Right. So if you're saying that
Like you're judging them based on the practical
if
or
in
based on objective
Christianity,
morality,
if
with exceptions in your own system.
God
for
drowning babies is never pragmatic. Never. If you're an all-powerful being, there are no justifiable immoral actions ever. It's not possible. Because a justifiable immoral action
Right.
is an imposition that you do in order to prevent a greater imposition. If you're all-powerful, you never need to do that. So
right, which is why I would again take my position on I would take my position on Christianity over the traditional Sky Daddy approach.
that's great, but that's irrelevant to the question right now. So
That's not Christianity.
So again, the point here,
Yeah,
there's
it
a
is.
difference
It's just not
between
literalistic
pragmatic
moronic
and
Christianity.
objective truth, and whether or not something's pragmatic is completely independent and irrelevant to whether or not it's objectively true. And so the first thing in morality you need to assess was the question the other guy asked was, how do you differentiate between different models of morality? The answer is that there's lots of different things in the field of morality we can assess, like problems in philosophy, moral dilemmas, moral intuitions, moral progress, and we can try to find which models best fit the lines of evidence that we do have, and then from that try to make predictions. Christianity does not fit that. It's one of the least accepted models in philosophy. 70 something percent of philosophers are atheists, 60 something percent believe in moral realism. God is one of the worst models because it doesn't correspond to any of the models, doesn't answer any of the questions of morality. It is a terrible model. And so to try to determine which models we should use the ones that most correspond to the lines of evidence we have in the field, which is moral intuition, moral progress, philosophical dilemmas, and ethical problems in the field of philosophy is ethics.
Hey, you guys mind if I ask a question real quick?
Go for it.
Hey, Tom. I remember I messaged you the problem of hell syllogism that I wanted to come up with for my yeah. So I had a 2-hour conversation with my professor. He's a Christian, and I actually asked him if he wanted to come on the Discord and have a debate with you. You know, because I thought it would be kind of interesting. But he asked. There was 2 questions that I couldn't that he asked me that I couldn't really answer.
Yeah.
And the first question was what's the point of being moral if there isn't like an afterlife? And the second question is how do you define better? Because I was trying to use your moral system, and I was trying to make him understand what better means in terms of like the best possible world. So if you can try to answer those questions for me, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, so you should try to be moral because it's the moral thing to do. Whether or not you have an afterlife is immoral. Like if you're only being moral for some kind of consequence, that's not morality. Morality is something that's true independent of whether or not there's an afterlife. And so if your worldview is contingent on this idea that there must be an afterlife for morality to be relevant, that's literally just immoral. Secondly, what does better mean? So better, the best of all possible worlds is just a definition. I'm just defining the word better there. It's not relevant. It's not significant to anything. What matters is if the morality is correct, the better world is the world that has the least imposition of will. That's what matters to that definition. I think those are the 2 questions. So the first one is you should be moral because it's the moral thing to do, not because there's an afterlife. Whether or not there's an afterlife shouldn't matter to morality. Second question is what is better? Better is just a label I'm using. The best of all possible worlds is a label for the most moral, morally perfect world. And so the best world is going to be the one that is the most moral and corresponds to whatever the correct moral principle is.
Yeah, Tom, I'm gonna try to get him on. He's a PhD psychologist.
Cool.
So, and he still manned my position on the problem of like he was trying to tell me like if I wanted to cover the problem of hell that I should cover the problem of evil as well. But I didn't see a reason to cover the problem of evil if there's like if I can find something
That's a good
else
point.
to
So
refute. Yeah.
for hell to be a bad thing, then there must be some set of principles to determine which things are good and which things are bad. And once we know which things are good and which things are bad, then only then can we say sending someone to hell is immoral. But if we don't already have a set of statements that say this is the good thing, this is the bad thing, then arguing that sending someone to hell is a bad thing is a secondary question because you first need to determine what is good and what is bad before you can then determine if someone does a bad thing, then they're immoral or something like that. So he's bringing up a relevant point that you need to have a definition of morality to be able to establish that sending people to hell is bad before you can actually use that as a premise in your argument. So it's a perfectly valid point.
Yeah, I just thought covering the problem of evil was so much more difficult than just going for the jugular, if that makes sense.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, Tom, I appreciate it. Thanks,
Yep,
man.
see it. And it's already past 2, so I got to head out. I'll leave the stage open for whoever wants to run it or whatever. And I'll talk to you guys later.